It is your PrisonPlanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
I'm just first of all want to thank Alex Jones for letting me be a guest host on his show and for talking to you wonderful people who are listening all over the world now and in the US. And today I'm going to have 3 guests for you. It's going to be largely about the Middle East and what's happening there at the moment. And my first guest is Keefe, who is a very well-known activist. He was a U.S. Marine during the first Gulf War in 1991, and that experience actually changed him. And he became a justice activist, and he was involved in the Human Shield program in Iraq in 2003, as well as the Gaza flotilla in 2009. And he was actually on the Navi Marmara, which was attacked by Israeli troops in international waters. So, hi Ken, are you there?
And my sister.
Hi Ken. I'm sure you've told your story many times, but could you just give us a brief history of your activism and your experience on the Navi Marmara?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess like most every American, I grew up believing my nation was the greatest in the world. And, you know, it was in that context that I joined the Marine Corps at the age of 19. And, you know, I think what happened to me probably is the greatest blessing of my life. I had an injustice that was done because I spoke out, basically reported my superiors for not leading by example, which is supposedly one of the tenets of the Marine Corps. And, you know, that taste of injustice just really transformed me. I realized, well, if I'm wrong about the Marine Corps, what else am I wrong about? You know, I didn't know anything about people like General Smedley Butler, one of the most decorated Marines in the history of the Marine Corps, who wrote a very good book called War is a Racket after he got out of the Marine Corps. And it kind of shows what the U.S. military is all about. So after I got out of the military, I started looking at American history and politics from independent perspectives, and I realized that just about everything that I was taught was a lie. And eventually that led me down the path of human rights and opposing war, except in the only case that I believe it's defensible, and that is in pure self-defense, which America hasn't had a genuine self-defense reason for war since they fought the British, I'd say, several hundred years ago. So, I mean, the Human Shield Action was just probably the first big thing that I initiated, and my participation in the Freedom Flotilla in which the Navi Marmara was attacked by the Israelis was simply a logical extension of what I believe, and that is that if we want to change the world, if we want to affect a better world, if we believe in brotherhood, if we believe in you know, human rights across the spectrum, then we damn well should put it on the line and act in accord with what we say are our beliefs.
Well, on that boat you were on, the Navi Marmara, actually 9 Turkish citizens were executed, and one of them had a dual U.S. citizenship as well. I know that the IDF boarded the boat illegally as it was in international waters. But at the time, Turkish President Erdogan was taking on some really anti-Israeli rhetoric, and he said that he himself would be on the next flotilla. But then when the next flotilla came about, he actually suddenly had a complete 180-degree turnaround, and the flotilla wasn't allowed through Turkish waters to get to the Gaza Strip. So why was there this sudden change of the relationship between Turkey and Israel? was the rhetoric of Erdogan truthful in the first place? And what was the purpose of the flotilla as well, just in case nobody out there actually knows?
Well, the flotilla was intended to break the blockade of Gaza, which now is in its 5th year. It's not quite as severe as it has been over that course of the 5 years, but what people need to understand is that in Gaza, what you have is effectively a concentration camp. Some people call it a prison, open-air prison camp, but prison camp denotes criminal behavior. It implies that everybody that's in the camp has committed some sort of crime. That's not accurate. Also, prisons have generally 3 square meals a day and medical care and stuff like this. So again, prison camp wouldn't be a correct sort of description. What would be correct, more correct, would be concentration camp, because the crime that people have committed in Gaza is being Palestinian. And Gaza has 1.6, 1.7 million people. Over half of them are children. So what you have is a collective punishment policy of 1.6, 1.7 million people, again, half of which, over half, are children. It's criminal, to say the least. It's a stain on the conscience of humanity that we've allowed it to go on as long as it has, and the Freedom Flotilla was intended to break that blockade. With regard to Erdogan, you know, I was certainly a believer that he was the real deal, and I've come to think otherwise for sure, especially after Turkey's involvement in supporting effectively what has happened to Libya, and ultimately the execution of Gaddafi. And now with what we see in the grand chessboard game of activity towards Syria, I don't really see any evidence to suggest that Erdogan is anything but one of the players in a big game in which all of these people that are heads of state are nothing more than puppets, and they all play a certain role. And I guess in his role, he was meant to look like a legitimate Muslim leader, although it's a secular government, it's a Muslim nation, and it was supposed to, I think, be a model for what Muslims should be doing. And ultimately what they're doing now is playing their role in the seemingly obvious World War III agenda, because we all know, those of us who were thinking that when Syria falls, if indeed it does fall in this context, we are one major step closer to World War III. So I think Erdogan, sadly, was nothing more than yet another puppet playing a game in this, playing his role in this very sick and twisted game.
Well, you know, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because as you know, Libya, Syria, that's all part of the Arab Spring umbrella. And with Egypt, you know, people say that that was probably one of the more legitimate looking Arab Spring revolutions. But then you have just recently, like the new Egyptian President Morsi sent an ambassador to Israel in order to renew the peace treaty with Israel. And at the same time, you have renewed attacks against the Gaza Strip just a few days ago by Israeli warplanes. So I was wondering, what's your take on the whole Arab Spring? I know you've touched on the fact that Turkey is involved in creating it in Libya and Syria, but do you think that there's any legitimacy in it?
Well, I think that, you know, the one thing that I have to say that I believe people really need to realize is that the whole democracy thing is one big sham. There isn't really any true democracy in this world. I mean, some are more legitimate than others, but democracy is nothing more than another form of dictatorship, in my opinion. I think republic is much better. You need to have a bedrock of human rights which cannot be touched, regardless of how stupid the population may be through manipulation and whatnot. And unfortunately, too many people in this world are easily manipulated and will support policies that are destructive towards human rights, civil rights. So I think, first off, we need to understand that democracy is a great big fraud, or pursuit of democracy. I do, however, believe that the Arab Spring it can't be explained simply as a big CIA operation, as many would claim. why would the U.S. really go away from a 32-plus year Mr. Reliable dictator in Mubarak? I don't see any strong reasons for them to have totally abandoned Mr. Reliability. He was nothing more than a Zionist stooge. He did virtually every single thing that he was ever asked to do. I really don't see any evidence to suggest that he was getting too big for his britches. And so I don't understand why the U.S. would abandon that for a very potentially risky change of leadership. So I still stand with that. However, the forces that be, the powers that be, are so powerful that even if things happen initially in the interest of the people, it can be co-opted and transformed and manipulated to their advantage unless we are 100% diligent and never give up. I think the one thing that really speaks to the so-called Arab Spring as being legitimate in one respect is that what you had in Egypt in particular, but other parts of the Middle East as well, is a population that had largely grown to accept its lot in life as nothing more than a population governed by a puppet dictator who capitulates and supports Western and Zionist policies. And most would not have even thought to rise up against such a dictatorship. And they would know that if they did, they would assuredly be tortured, imprisoned, and possibly killed. Now, in the aftermath of the Arab Spring, what we find is that a lot of people in the Middle East who would have otherwise simply accepted this lot in life now believe, at the very least, they believe that they could have something better. And in that sense, I believe the Arab Spring is very important. And it is necessary for people to realize that you cannot create a better world unless you can first conceive of the possibility. And that is the result of the Arab Spring. People conceive of the possibility that they could have a leadership which represents their views and their values and actually does the right thing. Now, whether Morsi is going to be doing that or not, unfortunately, it's looking a little less likely. And I hear talk, and, you know, we hear these pretty words, but when it comes to actual movement such as opening up Gaza now, that's what I would say. Open up Gaza now. It's good for Egypt. It's good for Palestine. It's good for the people of Gaza to open up the border between Gaza and Egypt and get that trade going. But we don't see that yet.
That brings us to a good point, because you have now a new initiative called the Trade Not Aid movement. So, you know, traditionally, countries have been giving aid to nations that are weaker or starving, and Palestine is one of those countries that receives aid. And, you know, for a lot of people, giving aid to a country is just a form of control. And trading, allowing a country to trade, is a form of independence. So could you tell us about your Trade Not Aid idea and initiative?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've hit on it a little bit here. One thing that I might add to that is that trade is very much used as a form of cultural imperialism and modern-day colonialism. So trade needs to be fair, and we have far too little of that. We all know about the trade agreements, so-called free trade agreements, which allow European products, which are heavily subsidized, to be flooded into markets such as in the African continent, whereby local farmers have no ability to compete, which means their local produce can't be sold, and instead Western products are sold in those countries. And poverty ensues, and it just destroys local farming, and ultimately that destroys self-sufficiency. So trade can be used in the same way as aid. Aid, however, is almost always used when it's large-scale, U.S. aid being a perfect example of nothing more than a so-called charity or some so-called humanitarian endeavor, which is nothing more than a form of infiltrating and subverting any kind of popular democratic movements or any kind of movement that would be constructive for the people. Trade is necessary, however, for self-sufficiency, fair trade. And in Gaza, what you have is over 5 years of a blockade. The people of Palestine have become effectively a charitable dependency. They are per capita the largest recipients of aid in the planet. And how good is that aid for them? Well, look at the conditions on the ground. I think it pretty much speaks for itself. That aid is not intended to truly help the Palestinians. In fact, that aid, or so-called charity, is being used to institutionalize the blockade, institutionalize the occupation, and effectively make the people dependent upon foreign investors whose real interest is to maintain the status quo and favor Israeli policy. So I'm adamantly opposed to that. I believe that we must do everything in our power to open up trade for the people of Gaza, in particular because the Palestinians are more than capable of standing on their own 2 feet should they have access to markets abroad and be able to import and export.
One interesting thing about the movement inside Palestine, Hamas, is actually taking a stance that is pro the insurgency in Syria. So in that sense, Hamas, which is, purported to be Israel's worst enemy in Palestine, is actually somewhat taking the Israeli and US side when it comes to Syria. What do you think about that, and what effect is the events in Syria going to have on the Palestinian people?
Well, the Palestinian cause has, for most of its history, been remarkably united, or at least somewhat cohesive. And it's only really in the last 10 years or so that we've found just this major split, major division, especially in 2006, 2007, when Hamas won the elections very legitimately in Palestine and was supposed to take the process of resisting to the political realm, which they never received any chance in that regard. The people of Palestine were punished heavily as a result of them exercising their so-called democratic rights. I'm disappointed, shall we say, that the Hamas government has done what it's done with regard to Syria. I understand fully well that there is legitimate dissent in Syria, but there is legitimate dissent in every nation of this world, and in America and in England and Europe for sure. There is deep resentment of these puppets that are pranced in front of us like heads of state. They're all nothing more than puppets. I think, for people not to see that Syria is one of the major pieces of the puzzle in this World War III agenda, and should it fall in this context, that we will be one step closer to a full-scale Third World War. I don't understand what it will take for people to see the pattern and to understand that this is the same old pattern. This isn't about helping the people of Syria, and this is certainly not about making the world a better place. This is all about, in my opinion, a last-ditch effort by the powers that be to save their skins by creating yet another war, because only when we're in a war, continuous state of war, can these bastards continue their method of control. And that's really, I think, where Syria fits in. And of course, it's one step closer to Iran, which is the real point.
Well, you've discussed with me off-air about what you believe the world's problems right now and how you think they can be solved. And you mentioned the Rothschild bankers, and I have to admit that economics is my weakest point. So I would really like to know what you would suggest that people do to sort of defeat the world bankers and the powers that be, if you have a suggestion.
Well, I think there's a lot of fixation and quite a bit of argument as to who really runs the world. I mean, some people believe it's the Illuminati. Some people believe that it's aliens. Other people believe it's corporations. But there's one thing for sure. If you want to understand power, you need to understand who has the power to issue money. And there is no question at all that the Rothschilds family, which is almost assuredly the wealthiest family on the planet, has immense control. In fact, Baron Rothschild said it all too rightly. I'll paraphrase what he said in the 1800s. Effectively, he said that he cared not what government was in power as long as he prints the money. And if you want to understand power, then you need to understand who prints the money and who can put zeros in the bank accounts. And why did we give trillions and trillions away to the bankers? Because the bankers own our governments and virtually everything else. They have the most immense amount of power, and they use that power to maintain their grip and control. And if we want to change the system of tyranny that has existed for at least many centuries, and I would argue much longer, then we need to understand that the financial system as it exists, private control and issuance of money, usury, this is unacceptable. We need to take control of the issuance of money. We need to have it transparent. We need to abolish usury. And there's a few other details that would be worthwhile to add into a new system. But ultimately, if we want to take back this country, make it a better place.
I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. It's sort of cutting out now. I'm not sure if I can be heard or if... Okay, cool. Hi, and we're back. I'll go right back to Ken and he just finish what he was saying about usury and the abolishment of usury. Ken? Sorry, I can't hear Ken. Do we have Ken? Yes. I just wanted to go back to Ken and let him finish what he was saying about the abolishment of usury.
Yeah, well, you know, the financial system is the head of a snake. That's the bottom line. And, you know, it should be very obvious to people in the aftermath of the taxpayers of the West giving away trillions and trillions to the bankers. I mean, how much more evidence do you need to show who has the real power? So it is indeed the head of the snake. And if we don't solve this problem, we're not going to solve any problems. This is why I think Ron Paul, I actually supported Ron Paul, and I've not been into politics. I see it as all one big theater show, quite frankly. But I respect the man deeply because of what he said about the Federal Reserve and the education that he's provided to so many Americans who were otherwise oblivious to how they're being raped and plundered through this fraud known as the Federal Reserve System. So, you know, if you want to understand power, you need to understand that system, and it's not nearly as complicated as it's made out to be. It's actually quite simple.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you so much, Ken, for being here and talking to us. And I wanted to know if, you know, people wanted to know more, could you plug your channel or anything that you're working on?
Well, certainly if you care about Palestine and would like to help out with some of the stuff that I'm doing there, there's a website, trade.aid.ps, and there's information there about the Samuni Project and Aloha Palestine and what we endeavor to do to break down the door of trade in Palestine, which will make a huge difference when we're successful. So people can visit that website. And thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best, my sister. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you. Okay, well, my next guest is a political analyst, and she's actually a senior associate at the Anthony's College of Oxford University. And she has a Master's of International Affairs, a degree from Columbia University, and actually she was a blogger at the Huffington Post. And if you've been watching Alex Jones, you would know that he interviewed the CNN journalist Amber Leung, who lost her job with CNN over her reporting of the Bahrain revolution. Well, you know, Bahrain being a country that, you know, is already controlled by the U.S. hegemony. So having a revolution there wasn't very good for the people in power. So of course, the media, the mainstream media, wasn't reporting on it. So with this CNN journalist being brave enough to step up and talk about it, she lost her job. And actually, the same thing happened to Sharmeen Narwani, our next guest, who has been censored by the Huffington Post. And she's here to talk to us about some of the things that she wrote that was censored by the mainstream media. Hello, Charmaine, are you there?
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Charmaine. Good, thank you. And you?
Very good. Looking forward to this.
Okay, well, first of all, you've been to Syria twice, I believe, in the last 2 years. Could you just tell us how your experience there changed your mind or set up your thoughts on Syria?
Yeah, actually, I've been to Syria 3 times this year already. And when I started writing about Syria, I think the first article I ever wrote was in December. It was a hard one because there were so many conflicting views on and reports about what was taking place there, as you well know. And that continues to this day. It's quite remarkable. And there's even evidentiary stuff that sometimes backs both sides. So it is a confusing story. And I started off by writing about the Arab League decisions regarding Syria, because that was a new development in the Middle East, the Arab League taking a very active role suddenly in deciding the fate of its neighbors, and as it had done with Libya as well right before that. And then, you know, I thought it was a bit dodgy the way suddenly certain members of the Arab League had catapulted to prominence and were not only leading the way, but smacking other member states into obedience. And then I came across a piece by Stratfor, the American, the US-based risk analysis or intelligence group. And Stratfor wrote something very interesting. It actually bucked the narratives on Syria and said that the opposition, the organized opposition outside of Syria, was lying and lying big, and gave 4 different pieces of evidence to back this up, and said that the opposition was digging themselves a hole by doing this, and you know, everyone, all the legitimate opposition, would also be tainted by this if this kind of thing continued. And it was something along the lines of what I was feeling. I was feeling like there was, you know, something missing from the Syrian story. It didn't make sense to me. So I took my first trip in January, and it was, I won't say it was a life-changing trip, because, I mean, but it did confirm some things for me. First of all, it confirmed to me that there was a significant segment of the Syrian population that was still behind their president or had not turned against him. You know, and how did I see this? I mean, for instance, going into Syria, I saw immediately things that I hadn't seen during previous trips, well before the Arab awakenings hit the region, which was, you know, Facebook was available. I could see the much vilified Al Jazeera and Al Arabiya on TV. I could even see the US-sponsored Al Hurra on my TV screens there. You know, I witnessed a very big pro-Assad demonstration that, for me, was notably not picked up anywhere in the West. I did see snippets of this demonstration on YouTube, but amazingly showing very, very few people in the crowds. I actually got there before, now this is the big pro-regime demonstration where Assad and his wife and I think 2 of their children showed up. I got there after the Assads spoke. I think I had a meeting or something. I got there after they spoke. And the crowds were huge still. I videotaped it and I put it online. But these YouTube videos showed no crowds. Whereas for hours after the Assads left, there were, you know, Syrians of all ages, you know, with the Islamist hijab, without, of all walks of life, soldiers, you know, civilians laughing, dancing, doing traditional Arabic dances, the dabke, and waving flags. And so I thought, well, you know, here's something you're not reading about. And I took that trip. I took the opportunity to speak to a number of domestic opposition figures who were very known among Syrians, as opposed to, you know, the Syrian National Council we've been hearing about outside, with members who most Syrians did not recognize. So I went to speak with domestic opposition figures who had been in Syrian jails, some for up to a decade, and were well known or relatively well known within the Syrian populace. What I got from that was also striking. To a person, they rejected any foreign intervention, they rejected the militarization of this conflict, and they rejected sanctions. So, you know, it was eye-opening in that I saw that there is an entirely different Syrian body politic, even in opposition to the Syrian government, that is not represented whatsoever in the Western media and much of the sort of Saudi-owned, I guess, Arab media. So, you know, that was interesting. And there was another thing I think that struck me during this trip was I spoke to some NGOs, and you know, off the record, they were telling me about sort of in conflict or conflicted areas of Syria where there were casualties, that it was not a simple matter, that there were you know, armed people shooting at soldiers and other officials, policemen, etc. And you know, and that this was not a straightforward conflict as was being reported, which led me to, you know, I've done a lot of pieces on Syria now, but I think for me, my most important piece that came out of this trip was one on the Syrian casualty list. And I draw your attention to this because it's kind of the crux of the whole matter. I mean, you know, people are screaming humanitarian crisis, and people are talking about, you know, humanitarian intervention, basically because of this list, this ever-growing list with, you know, numbers that started off in hundreds and then thousands, and now, you know, apparently above 20,000. And I came back from Syria that first trip, and I interviewed the United Nations, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I interviewed the Red Cross, the Red Crescent in Syria. I interviewed some of the casualty counting groups who are in opposition to the Syrian government. And what I sort of gleaned from all this research was that, and this was published back in February of this year, was that there is parity in the numbers of people killed on both sides. So there is no disproportionate Syrian regime response to a sort of peaceful civilian protests around the country. And I pointed out to the fact that even from as early as April 2011, so a few weeks after the first protests were seen in Daraa, you had incidents where, for instance, in Tartus, in Banyas, where 9 police officers were shot in a vehicle, and you know, and other incidents where off-duty policemen or soldiers, even a general traveling with his 2 sons and a nephew, were killed in cold blood. And these were acts of provocations to elicit, in my view, a response from the Syrian armed forces to then, you know, create the storyline of the Arab Spring in Syria, you know, brutal regime repressing us, using you know, heavy weapons and, you know, not rubber bullets, you know, weapons to kill. And so this civilian list, or this casualty list story, was an important one because it still remains to this day the crux of the argument for why people are, you know, sanctioning Syria, why they're talking about military intervention, why they're talking about creating humanitarian corridors. It's all because of this perception that the Syrian government is slaughtering unarmed, innocent civilians who are just, you know, voicing their right to a freer, more democratic society, which clearly Syria could probably do with, but it's not what's happening in Syria. I posit from the beginning it is actually very even on both sides. The brutalities and the killing have reached parity from very early on.
So as your, reporting became increasingly anti-insurgency, you weren't towing the mainstream media line. You wrote that the Huffington Post actually began to censor your blog posts about Syria. Can you just tell us about your experience with that?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say they waited, and I wouldn't say that it became, my writing became increasingly anti-insurgent. I questioned, I simply questioned, and I did investigative work, which is not my thing because I write commentary and analysis, but Syria was so confusing, so, one sort of went, read between the lines and went deeper and tried to get original sourcing. And I, as I wrote these stories, it wasn't, I think people viewed me as being pro-regime, which was not at all the case, because I was never speaking to anyone in the regime. I was always only speaking to domestic opposition figures, and not the ones, bandied around by the mainstream media. But I think the Huffington Post changed, with me at least, when AOL purchased it in early 2011. This was the first time I saw any censorship. Prior to that, really, I could write about anything, and my tone hasn't changed very much about how I report on the Middle East. When the Huffington Post first engaged me, the world editor at the time, who was the founding world editor, was very excited about a trip I was making to the Middle East, where I was interviewing for the first time senior members of Hezbollah and Hamas, So here was the Huffington Post, very keen to hear alternative viewpoints from the Middle East. And don't forget, both these organizations were on the U.S. list of terrorist organizations. So, it was a bold new world. The blogosphere, and the Huffington Post was taking the lead. And not censoring voices and allowing voices like mine an opportunity to be heard. When AOL purchased the Huffington Post, the first time I saw any of my work censored, the first was a piece on Hezbollah's, or allegations that Hezbollah had Scuds, which has been an old Israeli allegation. And I'd actually started researching this in 2009. So when a terrible article in the Times of London came out on it, I used that as an opportunity to sort of showcase my research on whether Hezbollah has Scuds or not. That was censored. There was another piece that was censored later last year, which was on the Iran-Saudi assassination hoax, which I called a hoax. And then the very first piece I wrote on Syria was censored, and it was just a revelatory piece on the Arab League deliberations on Syria, where I produced original material that wasn't in the media. And then they allowed my piece on Stratfor, calling the opposition liars, out, and then never allowed another piece of mine on Syria to be published on the Huffington Post. So it was, well, I think it's important because Syria on the world pages of the Huffington Post was the largest story of the last year. And they repeatedly published articles timelined out of Beirut and Amman by correspondents and writers from wire services who had not been to Syria, but refused to even publish the first-hand account of one of the Huffington Post's very own bloggers on the Middle East, on the new AOL Huffington Post hybrid. So that was shocking. It was shocking. What can I say? I mean, it's not. You about Amber Lyon's piece, or Amber Lyon being censored at CNN. I remember watching her in the early days of her Bahrain coverage and saying, "Wow, how are they allowing this?" And I have a colleague at the National Review online, the neoconservative publication, who has also recently seen his Syria pieces, which question the mainstream dominant narratives, now being censored. So I think it's happening in all media, and it raises questions about, how this is happening in all media, and, the same old storyline, which I think is accurate about who owns the media and what their interests are.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned was the importance of this narrative in the mainstream media or the NATO-run media. And one of the articles that you wrote was reporting about the U.S. Special Forces Unconventional Weapons Manual. And I was wondering, can you describe to us what is in this unconventional warfare manual and how that relates to Syria, and why having this narrative of, a hit list of like, how many have died today, and the perception controlled by the mainstream media is so important.
Yeah, look, I came across the Unconventional Warfare Manual on an obscure blog somewhere. It wasn't even the manual, it was a link that I just came across, and my mouth dropped, and I ran to my editor at the time and said, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this is, huge. I think probably for old hands at InfoWars, it's probably not as much of a revelation, but I mean, clearly when I put it online at Al Akhbar English, it was picked up by numerous alternative U.S. and European media, and it was an eye-opener for a number of people, so I'm always happy to talk about this. It's, the U.S. decided after Iraq and Afghanistan, which were conventional wars that put a lot of American money, men, and military hardware to use, that it was too expensive a proposition for them. So they created something that's always been there, a manual for unconventional warfare, and declared that for the foreseeable future, U.S. forces will predominantly engage in irregular warfare operations. So what does this mean? Well, so the United States government has a perceived foe, let's say the Assad regime or the Iranian regime or the Libyan regime, and they look at these countries this way. Unconventional warfare is really to get local populations to fight America's wars on its behalf. So they look at a population as a whole, and they recognize that there's a small sliver that is very pro-government, and there's a small sliver that's very anti-government. But in the middle, you have a largely uncommitted population. Perhaps they're apathetic, perhaps they kind of like their government, perhaps they kind of don't, but they're not moved to do anything about it. As is probably the case with the American population. A small sliver that's very pro-Obama, a small sliver that's very anti-Obama, and then an uncommitted middle. And the goal of unconventional warfare is to sway the uncommitted middle by using psychological means to support a rebellion against their government. And this is where, if you look back in some of the revolutions we've seen in Eastern Europe and even before, you see incidents that, now that we have this manual, this blueprint right in front of us, makes you wonder. I mean, there's incidents of snipering. In Syria, for instance, you saw, young children being sniped. Why would the Syrian government want to do this? When at the same time they were engaging with leadership in local towns and villages and cities across Syria to try to, calm down. So, there's a pyramid used in the Unconventional Warfare Manual, which, by the way, can be found on my Al Akhbar English article. A link to it in the first paragraph if anyone wants to read the whole thing. But the pyramid actually, discusses doing how do you sway the middle population. You engage in acts of sabotage. You exploit the vulnerabilities of a government, and you do things, for instance, like backing or pushing strikes and boycotts at a local level to give the impression of widespread populace or discontent within the population. You have you then take it to another level where you have sabotage in cities. You have acts of terrorism, to be quite frankly, in cities. You expand operations that you then create a national liberation front, which will be militarized, and then you create a national governing body that is supposed to be the voice of the opposition. In this case, the Free Syrian Army and the Syrian National Congress, SNC. So, this diagram and the explanation in the Unconventional Warfare Manual, when I saw it, absolutely mirrored what we were seeing happening in Syria, and I think in what we saw happen in Libya, and what I think the U.S. government was attempting last February in Iran, when it kicked off like Twitter activities and whatnot to sort of whip up the populations in Iran, and we're seeing this now in Iran as well. So it's about slowly creating perception of widespread discontent, and then some incidents to whip up popular anger, and then you translate that further into supporting a rebellion. You, at a certain point, the U.S. Unconventional Warfare Manual instructs participants to then solicit at that point you get foreign assistance in the term of equipment, in the form of equipment, cash, I think training, and then then you take it a little bit further. You have increased agitation. You infiltrate the police forces, the army. You try to solicit the defection of major players in the government and in the armed forces and in the police forces and any government affiliated organization. You expand front organizations. You start upping overt and covert activities. At some point, the United States has hit its forces involved, but more the periphery. Like I said, this unconventional warfare is about saving the American military blood and treasure. You get the Arabs to fight your wars for you, and more and more guerrilla actions, more and more urban sabotage. You take it to the capital, and then you have a regime change, basically. So we saw this in Libya. But in Libya, it wasn't the U.S. Remember, the U.S. led from behind the NATO operations. And, it's questionable whether Libya happened so quickly. We hardly had a chance to take a breath. But it's questionable now, I think, whether Gaddafi would have been ousted had NATO not been involved. And I think because NATO has not been able to get involved in Syria because of Russian and Chinese veto, you now have the U.S. soliciting the tacitly or directly, we don't know yet, the involvement of jihadists who are flooding the Syrian borders and carrying out military operations and bringing know-how about urban sabotage and bombings and suicide bombings to Syria.
So it's really interesting, especially what you mentioned about the sniping and the bombing. Like that's actually in the manual to try to provoke an uprising, and that's pretty much exactly as we saw by the script that what happened in Syria. And you mentioned the jihadists in Syria, and what I've heard you say before, which is very intriguing, is that Al-Qaeda, we label it Al-Qaeda, but the definition of it is not exactly as the mainstream media had us believe over the last decade, that it was this mega organization that had subterranean bases and it was just everywhere. And it seemed to be everywhere that the US needed to attack. But now, of course, as they did, in Afghanistan, when they were trying to kick the Soviets out, they funded and created Al-Qaeda. They're doing this again, but in a different way, because you have people from all over the world now, across the Middle East, even in Sydney, Australia, and in Europe, taking up and holding the Al-Qaeda flag and chanting Osama, Osama. I mean, Obama, Obama. We love Osama. So it's become Al-Qaeda has become more like an idea, and I believe it's really been just an idea or a meme that the media has been propelling. And you actually wrote something about this in 2009. You wrote an article, Al-Qaeda Under My Bed, and I believe you also said that there's a new Stratfor document that's come out that actually admitted, Al-Qaeda is just a meme and a loose, group of jihadists that are taking on this ideology. So could you comment on what your theory is?
non-Al-Qaeda expert. The article I wrote in, I think it was January of 2010, was called Looking Under My Bed for Al-Qaeda, because at that time there were, I think, the U.S. was droning in Yemen, and there was an explosion of something, I think, in the south of Jordan, Islamist Salafist militants. And at the, and the U.S. was taking a very, very suddenly resurgent active role in the region. And perhaps with the peace process not working out, and its Iranian regime change plans not working out, and the volume against Israel becoming deafening globally. So I basically argued that I'm going to be looking under my bed for Al-Qaeda tonight, because they're springing up everywhere all of a sudden. And, whether they're really Al-Qaeda or not was questionable, because I recall in a couple of years ago sitting with Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, who was Chief of Staff for Secretary of State Colin Powell. And, he said to me, there are 242 Al-Qaeda operatives, and we're running after them like they're the biggest national security threat. And he said, we have possibly 10% of Americans who are a bigger threat to national security than 242 Al-Qaeda operatives, who are running scared in the Middle East. So, there were never a lot, and I think experts state this, and every day or week you're hearing that another Al-Qaeda operative or several Al-Qaeda operatives have been taken out by drone attacks. And what's happened to that number? Can there possibly be any remaining? And I did notice that everywhere the U.S. went in the region, when they did start droning activities, Al-Qaeda type groups were springing up in other areas. And I think, by and large, it is the United States that has made the largest investment in Al-Qaeda by far, because everywhere they go, they grow the global brand and invest in the expansion of Al-Qaeda franchises. The whole idea behind why Al-Qaeda even came to be is because of, American troops being on sacred soil in Saudi Arabia. And this was, a sacrilege, and we wouldn't tolerate it anymore. So initially, other than the antagonism that the Al-Qaeda founders had towards the Saudi regime, the Al Saud family, and many of those monarchies, there was huge antagonism towards the U.S. Military in particular, and Israel, of course. But now you see something different. I agree with you 100%. Al-Qaeda has morphed into an idea, a brand, a convenient scapegoat for just about any operation the U.S. and its allies want to undertake in the Muslim world at large. Today, you have Al-Qaeda more as an idea. You have young men who are frustrated, angry, disenfranchised, who are, wearing the Al-Qaeda flag and Al-Qaeda black to, represent this idea. Now, the problem is, in some of these areas, Al-Qaeda is on the same side as the United States. It's avowed enemy. And increasingly, certainly in places like Syria and in Libya, and even against Iran, where you see militant Salafists engaging, where the U.S. used to fuel this militant Salafist resentment, we now see the U.S. engaging militant Salafism. And I think you could, very appropriately call them America's Islamist handmaidens, because certainly in the battles we're seeing in the Middle East, the U.S. is either tacitly or directly allowing the growth or involvement of these type of individuals into conflict. The United States very erroneously thinks that it can control these elements, or that it can allow it to get to the point where there's controlled chaos. Unfortunately for the people of these regions, these militant Salafists are just as much abhorred in the region as they are by, in the Western media. So it's terrible for the region. This region doesn't need controlled chaos. It needs building bricks to get to the next level. And frankly, it's time that the United States made a really strong exit from this region. I'm talking, rolling back their bases and getting the hell out. Nobody wants American money. Take your, ill-intended, conditional financial assistance to and get out, because no matter what kind of credit Obama and others are taking about bringing freedom and democracy to this region, it is the United States that has backed the most brutal and undemocratic regimes in this region. They continue to do so with the Gulf monarchies. Their two biggest bases, the big military bases in Qatar, the largest in the region, and their largest naval base in the region is in Bahrain. So the U.S. government, I think, has allocated, has now agreed to sell the Gulf Cooperation Council member countries, I think it's $129 billion of weapons. This is since the Arab awakening took off. So it's crazy. It's they're not helping. The U.S. is not helping whatsoever towards helping populations move towards any kind of freedom or democracy. It's absolutely the contrary. The U.S. government has sucked it up where it's needed to with Egypt and with Tunisia, but it sure as hell isn't going to let anyone else get away with it, and is very much behind the counter-revolution swing through this region. And in my view, the counter-revolutions are a distraction from the countries most likely to be hit by public, widespread popular protest. We saw those in what happened. It was Tunisia with Ben Ali, and it was Egypt's Mubarak, and around the same time, Yemen and Bahrain caught on fire, and we were hearing about street demonstrations and a few beatings in Jordan, and these are all U.S. supported governments, and it was essential to move things away from these U.S. proxy states, because otherwise, the U.S. would be out of the region, and so you had Libya very conveniently stirred up, and now Syria. And of course, Iran stays on the map. But I remember an article. I remember thinking when all this started in 2011, how is the U.S. going to tolerate this? And David Sanger of the New York Times, who I don't love, he writes, silly stories on the Iranian nuclear issue. But he absolutely, I think, hit the nail on the head when he talked about the Obama administration looking at every single one of these uprisings in the Arab world through the prism of how this affects Iran's growing hegemony and growing influence in the region. Even if we would, in the United States, be okay with reforms in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, not while Iran was gaining. And we would not let Iran gain. And so, this is the story of, sadly, the story of the Arab Spring. It's become, the American-Saudi counter-revolution. Hopefully, and I tend to think, as others perhaps who are in the world of Middle East geopolitics, that Syria might actually be the final battleground on this, because Syria was so badly done. So I guess, there was a lot of chutzpah in what the U.S. did in Syria.
Definitely.
Really gargantuan balls to go into a country and from one end to the other, whip up these kind of revolts. And not only that, but completely lie and misrepresent, what's going on there. And what happened in Syria that's interesting is other growing global hegemons. We're going towards a multilateral world. So those other players stepped up, the BRICS in particular, and most notably, the Russians and the Chinese stood up and said, no way, no more. You've shot your wad. This is the last UN Security Council resolution for this kind of warfare was Libya. It's not going to happen in Syria. And we see the Russians increasingly wrapping their arms around Syria. And I think, it's a wise thing to do. It's the other BRIC countries like India and Brazil also agree with this, that Syria is for Syrians to resolve. And it's not for anybody else, not for neighboring states, it's not for international players, it's for Syrians to resolve. And it's probably the only way to do it, because right now they're importing foreigners to help win a battle that is unwinnable. And this Syrian battlefield is, I think, going to be the last battle the United States is going to fight in the Middle East. It's lost its conventional wars, and it has, I think, if Syria had happened in 3 months, nobody would have noticed these games. Nobody would have noticed this irregular warfare. But because it's been now 19 months, so much is under scrutiny. I think many people in the region have started to see the level and intensity of games and machinations that have gone into, thwarting the will of a population and creating rebellion. And I don't think it's going to happen easily again. Certainly the Iranians are on watch.
Oh, let's hope for the best in this case. I do get a lot of hope from just listening to you talk about that. And I'm really thankful that you came to talk to us today. I certainly learned a lot. And I guess I'll be speaking to you again soon.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks a lot, Sharmeen. And again, your newspaper is called Al-Akhbar, is it? And where people can access your...
I write, they can look for this article in Al-Akhbar English. I've published most of my articles on Syria in Al-Akhbar English, but I also have my blog at MideastShuffle.com, which my other pieces in the New York Times and Salon.com and Huffington Post also appear. And I can always be followed on Twitter at @snarwani.
Okay. Thanks again, Sharmeen.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we're back we're with Dr. Ali Muhammad, who is the editor-in-chief of the Syria Tribune website newspaper, and he's actually from Syria as well. And he's going to talk to us about the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is a group that's inside Syria that's, has a lot of influence. It's probably the second most influential group. And it's one of the groups that is sort of pushing this insurgency. And, Dr. Ali, is the Muslim Brotherhood just another jihadi group, or what is their significance and power in Syria? And can you tell us a little bit about their ideology and what their aims are?
Hello, Mimi. Thank you for having me again. Actually, this is a very important topic, and we need to discuss it in as much detail as possible. The Muslim Brotherhood is not just another jihadi group. It's actually the mother of all jihadi groups. If we go back in history, we need to realize that the boom of jihadi groups came with the Soviet-Afghani war in the 80s. And back then, there was this person whose name is Abdullah Azzam, who's Palestinian Jordanian, and he started by forming a jihadi group in Palestine, but very soon he stopped that and he went to Egypt, then to Saudi Arabia, and there he went to Pakistan to supervise all the influx of the jihad, the Arab jihadis, what the later to be called the Afghan Arabs. This person was actually the spiritual father of all jihadi groups, and he is a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's worth mentioning that Abdullah Azzam is Osama bin Laden's teacher and spiritual leader, and it's actually from under his cloak that Osama bin Laden rose. Despite the fact that they disagreed on certain things at the end, and Osama bin Laden formed a unity with Ayman al-Zawahiri, the current leader of Al-Qaeda. And this ended up in creating the global jihadi groups that the world is suffering because of now. So as you can see, the Muslim Brotherhood has an important role in the initiation of all this global jihad. And this is actually not surprising, because if you go back to the very roots, even before Abdullah Azzam, the Muslim Brotherhood was created by a person called Hassan al-Banna. He's an Egyptian, and Hassan al-Banna was the first leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. But later, not very much later, actually in the 50s, a person called Sayyid Qutb joined the Muslim Brotherhood and then became the #1 ideology provider for the Muslim Brotherhood, as well as the global jihad groups. And Sayyid Qutb is a very unique character, actually. He believes in violence. He states that violence is the only way to spread the word of God. And he was actually asked to repent in exchange for his life, because he was sentenced to death during the time of President Jamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt. But he refused to repent, and he said, "I prefer to die for the Sharia of Allah." So this kind of ideology,
Sharia law.
Yeah, Sharia law. So this kind of ideology is actually what created the special groups in Muslim Brotherhood, whether in Syria or in Egypt. They were called in Egypt the special group, simply as simple as this. But in Syria they were called the Fighting Scout. These are groups from the Muslim Brotherhood who believed in violence and in suicide bombing and all sorts of currently well-known Islamic jihadist methods. And so yes, basically what you can clearly say, and it's proven historically, is that the Muslim Brotherhood is the spiritual entity from which all jihadi groups, even Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden's groups, emerged.
Well, can you tell us then a little bit about their history in the US? Because, in Syria. Because this is not the first time that Muslim Brotherhood has had an uprising in Syria.
Of course. Actually, it's funny that you slipped and said in the U.S., because the U.S. did play a role in forming the ideology, because Sayyid Qutb, the founder of the violence ideology, studied in the U.S., and it was his reaction to the openness and sexual freedoms in the U.S. that caused him to be very extreme in refusing these and in trying to establish what he would like to call the Sharia of Allah in the Muslim countries. So yeah, the US played a role somehow, even if indirectly. The UK, though, played a more direct role in their establishment, because a lot of historical researchers say that Hassan al-Banna was somehow linked to the British embassy in Egypt. Anyway, back to our subject in Syria. The Muslim Brotherhood in Syria was formed in 1942, if I am not mistaken. The person who formed it was a friend of Hassan al-Banna's, who studied in Al-Azhar, and he was influenced by al-Banna's ideology. And in 1945, this person, his name is Mustafa Sibai, he's from Homs, by the way, he was elected the first leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria. At the beginning, the Muslim Brotherhood wanted everybody to believe that they believe in non-violence and in elections and democracy, etc. But this did not last long, actually. They started clashing with all the governments in Syria very soon. I think it was in 1953, I guess, where they threatened this person, Mustafa Sibai, and his group threatened to burn bars and discotheques in Damascus, the same way they did in the famous, or let's say the infamous Cairo, the huge Cairo fire, and they threatened to do the same in Syria. And later, with the unity with Egypt in 1958, the Muslim Brotherhood subsided, and they were They were scared because Jamal Abdel Nasser, the president of the then called the United Arab Republic, he was a sworn enemy of the Muslim Brotherhood, so they were quiet for the 3 years during the unity. After that, in 1963, when Ba'ath came to power in Syria, they started clashing violently, and that's when the infamous the Fighting Scout, or what we call in Arabic At-Tali'a Al-Muqatila, was formed. And actually, it's funny because history repeats itself. At-Tali'a Al-Muqatila, or the Fighting Scout back then, committed disastrous crimes against Syrian people, and they blamed the government for them, just the same way they are doing now. So it started to escalate, and it's worth mentioning that this was even before the era of President Hafez al-Assad, the father of the current president. So the very first clash happened in Hama, and the Syrian army had to attack Hama, and that was under Amin al-Hafez presidency, a Sunni president from the same area. So the claim that the Muslim Brotherhood would like people to believe that it was al-Assad's family that started fighting with them is totally not true. It was way before that, actually, literally 7 years before that. After that, please go ahead.
Sorry, no, please continue.
So after that, their violence escalated, and with Hafez al-Assad coming to power in 1970, the Syrian government became stronger and more stable after a long time of coup d'etat and another coup d'etat the next day. And Hafez al-Assad brought stability to Syria, mainly by defeating all other opponents, political opponents. Obviously, the Muslim Brotherhood, because of their secret nature and the way they operate in small groups and the methodology that they use to protect themselves, they were the tougher nut to crack for President Assad, the father. Then they found an opportunity when Syria was exhausted later at the end of the 70s, early 80s, because Syria had to interfere in Lebanon back then because of the Lebanese civil war that erupted in 1976. And the Syrian army had to send a lot of units to Lebanon to fight, to stop the fight, and later to fight Israel in the Israeli invasion in 1982-83. And at the same time, the Iraqi president, back then, he was the #1 hero for the US and NATO nations because he was fighting Iran. I'm referring, of course, to Saddam Hussein, the late Iraqi president. He was not at good terms with Syria, and he started supporting the Muslim Brotherhood, and they found it as an opportunity. This created the escalation of events that ended in what is now called the Hama disaster, let's say. The opposition would like to call it the Hama massacre, and the Syrian government would like to call it the Hama events. The escalation happened because this Fighting Scout started committing terrorist actions, and they actually they admitted, even Ali Sadr al-Din al-Bayanuni, the current leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, admits that it was the Muslim Brotherhood who killed people in Azbakiya in Damascus. It was the Muslim Brotherhood who burnt cinemas and theaters, and it was definitely the Muslim Brotherhood that killed a lot of officers in a military school in Aleppo. The killing of the officers in the military school of Aleppo was on a sectarian basis, and it was a very ugly stage in the Syrian history. The Syrian army decided then that it's time to take rid of them, and things escalated until the Battle of Hama. And after the Battle of Hama, the Muslim Brotherhood had zero presence in Syria for a long time. Up until 2011, when they had the chance, because of the rise of what is falsely called the Arab Spring, while we should call it the Muslim Brotherhood Spring, or the Muslim Brotherhood Autumn, if we want to be more specific. The Muslim Brotherhood winning in Tunisia, in Egypt, and winning under the table in Libya as well, and now they are trying to win Syria. The history and the awareness of the Syrian people that the Muslim Brotherhood is a group of terrorists made it very difficult for them to win Syria. They are still fighting, supported by all the countries that have interests in Syria being defeated and weak, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, and other NATO nations, of course. So they are fighting with hope that they will control Syria, but the Syrian army is fighting back with hope and actions not to allow them to.
Well, it's interesting you call it a Muslim Brotherhood spring, because you can see all of these Islamic governments emerging from what the US is calling the Arab Spring. And it's also, from the Foreign Policy website, a report that was released by the Defense Intelligence Agency that actually pretty much out in the open said, you know, we need to support the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, that the Muslim Brotherhood has tried to take over Syria in the past, but it was because the Syrian people didn't want them that they were rejected. And it also interestingly mentioned about the Hama massacre, as they call it, which the media repeatedly talks about the Assad regime, Hama massacre, 30,000 people killed. But the number was also being soldiers. Sorry. Well, going back to you, Ali, I just want to ask you about the relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood and Turkey.
Between the Muslim Brotherhood and?
Turkey.
And Turkey. Okay, let me first comment on what you said. It's very ironic that the Muslim Brotherhood Spring is supported by the U.S. because on one hand, the U.S. kills Osama bin Laden, the faithful student of Abdullah Azzam. Of the Muslim Brotherhood, and on the other hand, it supports the Muslim Brotherhood to control the countries that were invaded by this manipulation and media attacks. So yes, it is very ironic, and it is definitely a Muslim Brotherhood spring, because if you look at how things turned out, you will see that it turned out in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood controlling the area. Now, why is the U.S. and Israel not concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood controlling the area? Now, this is the important question that we need to ask ourselves. It's very silly to think that the U.S. and other NATO nations are after democracy and the welfare of the Arab people, because if they were, they wouldn't have supported the dictators for tens of years, actually, for half a century, let's be specific. So it's definitely not the welfare of the Arabic people. They want the Muslim Brotherhood there for a reason, because the Muslim Brotherhood can be controlled, and actually its role is, their role is to be controlled by others. It's very hard for them to be independent. Currently, it's common knowledge now that there are countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey supporting the rebels in Syria and giving them arms, money, and means of communication. These countries that are giving the arms are definitely the countries that will be calling the shots if the dream comes true and they topple the Syrian regime. So if a certain group controls Syria, and this certain group is controlled by Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the US in the background, then it's definitely a spring for Israel, because it's all the actions happen in favor of the Israeli interest in the area. And when we are talking about the Israeli interest, we're not talking about the Old Testament interest that Israel claims to be founded on, but the actual economic interest in oil, in gas, in the strategic positioning of the area, in all these different aspects. Turkey and its relationship with the Muslim Brotherhood is not new, and we all know that Najmuddin Erbakan, the founder of the new era of Islamic politics in Turkey, is one of the Muslim Brotherhood behind the stage, and now his faithful student, or let me say his unfaithful student, Erdogan, because Erbakan was at least working for the favor of his nation, but Erdogan doesn't seem to care much about the welfare of Turkey. He's more worried about the welfare of the Islamic uprising. So Erdogan is supporting these rebels publicly, and these rebels are mainly Muslim Brotherhood and other Salafi jihadi groups. So the link here is very clear, and Erdogan and Davutoglu are not denying it. They are happy about it. They hosted the very first Muslim Brotherhood convention back in April 2011, and they supported them publicly, and they helped them form the Syrian National Council, which we can easily call the Muslim Brotherhood Syrian National Council. And they supported them in the media, they supported them with weapons, money, they allowed them to cross the borders freely, and they helped them locate strategic areas and strategic sites for the Syrian army and the Syrian government. So the link is very clear, and nobody is denying it. The question is, what will Erdogan win? I bet nothing. He will lose everything.
Well, it's very interesting you say it's very clear, but then in the media, you have repeated over and over again that Israel is fearful of having Sunni Islamists be in power in Syria. But, you know, I've heard also that the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't have an anti-Israeli policy. And of course, you know, Israel is allies with Saudi Arabia, which, you know, one of the most extreme Islamist countries in the region. So why do you think it is that this kind of mind split in the media and reality is existing? You know, is there any legitimacy in the so-called fear of Israel, of the Muslim Brotherhood?
No. This is just a way of selling the Muslim Brotherhood as a good group for the Arabic people, the simple Arabic people who only care about the fight with Israel and about regaining the Arabic rightful rights in Palestine, in Gaza, the West Bank, in Syrian occupied Golan Heights, and the rights, the strategic rights of oil and gas, etc. So to sell the Muslim Brotherhood to these people, the media is trying to portray the Muslim Brotherhood as anti-Israel. But lucky for us, the Muslim Brotherhood is not very good at concealing its intentions, because just a few weeks ago, the Egyptian president, who is the Muslim Brotherhood candidate, he sent a message to Shimon Peres, the Israeli president, and he called him my great friend. And this was leaked to the media, and there's a copy of it online, and everybody knows it. And the presidential palace in Egypt did not deny it. They were very frank about it. So the very first Muslim Brotherhood president in Egypt is calling the Israelis our great friends, not our friends, our great friends. So this tells all that we need to hear about the relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood and Israel. It's not a bad relationship in any way. It's actually a honeymoon, and we can see the results in Gaza and in what the Egyptian army did on the borders, and in Israel, allowing the Egyptian army to go into Sinai for the first time since the peace treaty. So, well, look at them. They are good friends. So what is the media talking about? Just nothing.
Absolutely. Well, we're nearing the end, but I think there's still time for another question. You mentioned that the Muslim Brotherhood is, in fact, you know, one of basically the parent or the mother of all of the other jihadi groups, and that, you know, even in its inception, it was supported by the UK. But now we see a sort of a split between the Muslim Brotherhood and the more Salafi and Wahhabi groups. So the agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood, what is it? Is it to create an Islamic nation? And what is the difference now? Why is there a little bit of a split between Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood? Is there one? Is there a split?
Yes, there is a difference. The history of this difference goes back to the end of the Soviet presence in Afghanistan, because when the Soviet forces withdraw from Afghanistan, there was a discrepancy and a big disagreement between Abdullah Azzam, the Muslim Brotherhood leader that I told you about earlier, and his two students, Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri. Abdullah Azzam thought that now that we took rid of the Soviets, we need to go back to Palestine and fight there. But Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri disagreed, and they thought that the Arabic governments are the next target, and we should liberate the Arabic lands from the what they call the filthy governments before we go back to Palestine strong and united. And this disagreement caused Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri to form Al-Qaeda from under the cloak of the Muslim Brotherhood. And this Al-Qaeda was and still is the umbrella name under which a lot of Salafi jihadi groups operate. It's worth mentioning that Abdullah Azzam was killed in a car bombing in Afghanistan when he was going to give his Jumu'ah prayer speech somewhere. And there's a lot of people think that Ayman al-Zawahiri had something to do with killing Abdullah Azzam. And Abdullah Azzam's family seem to think that no, Ayman al-Zawahiri could not do that, it must be Israel, etc. But killing Abdullah Azzam was killing the violent wing of the Islamic Jihad that wanted to target Israel, and leaving the stage open for the other wing that is more extreme, more fundamental, and they wanted to fight somewhere else, as has been clear for the past 20 or more years. So this is the history of this discrepancy. But now when we look at the Syrian situation, we can clearly see that Jabhat al-Nusra, for example, which is an extreme Qaeda-type Salafi jihadi group, is fighting hand in hand with the Muslim Brotherhood. So they are united now against a common enemy, which is the Syrian government and the Syrian people. But very soon, if their dream comes true and the country falls into their hands, the very first fight that will erupt, it will be between these two groups, the Muslim Brotherhood on one hand and the other Islamic Jihad groups on the other. And the result will, of course, be a disaster to the Syrian people, and a lot of killing, a lot of massacres, and ruining economy and the future of millions of Syrians. So although they are both the enemy of the Syrian people at the moment, and they should be considered the enemy of human civilization at the moment, they are together now because they are united against a common enemy. But very soon, if they are, and actually it actually started, but at a low scale, but if they win, it will be big scale, and it will be a disaster for the Syrian people and for the region altogether.
Well, thank you so much, Ali, for talking with us. And, you know, great respect to you. Would you like to plug your newspaper again?
I actually, your sound was breaking, Mimi. I'm sorry. So I didn't really understand what you want me to do. I hope the control can help me here. To plug my newspaper?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
If you, you will explain this to me under the air, and I'm sure that it will help the Syrian cause.
You're on the air now. So you have Syria Tribune. Syria Tribune.
Yes, you want me to plug it. Okay, now I get it. So yes, please visit Syria Tribune for detailed reports on the Syrian situation, and especially on the fightings and the situation on the ground. Syria Tribune is spelled Syria, SYRIA-Tribune as spelled.com. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook the way you prefer. And we hope we'll continue providing reports that are accurate and proven by evidence to show the outside world that what is happening in Syria is far from being a spring and far from being Arabic.
Thank you so much, Ali. Thank you to Alex Jones for giving me these 2 hours, and all the listeners that are out there who are listening in very early in the morning in America. This is Syrian Girl saying goodbye.
Rob Dew. Said again, it's early Friday morning, 7 a.m. if you're in the Central Time Zone, 8 p.m. or 8 a.m. if you are over on East Coast, and if you're on the West Coast, you're still probably asleep. Welcome. It is continuing coverage of our 48-hour Money Bomb Marathon. We're deep into it right now. Let's see. I'm Rob Dew. I'm going to be here for the next 2 hours, and it's great to be here. After myself at 9 a.m. is going to be David Icke. Then we're going to have Alex, I guess will be in here with an Ask Alex segment with Christy Hightower. Then he's going to have Gerald Salente, Michael Badnarik, Max Kaiser, who just released Enema of the State, Joseph Farah, Amber Lyon, Larry Pickney, John B. Wells, Darren McBreen, Richard Reeves. Then we're going to have David Knight guest hosting, Darren McBreen and Rob Jacobson guest hosting. And then we're going to have Joel Gilbert later on in the day. That's going to take us up to about 11 p.m. And you can get all that information at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. And if you look over to the right, you can see the counter of how much time is left. You have a little spot there where you can donate different amounts of money. And we do appreciate your donations. Today is Friday, a payday for at least half the people out there who are on a biweekly or a weekly schedule. And we do appreciate those donations. We're up to 111,000 at this point and looking to make that number grow really big during the day to reach our $1 million goal. And you can see the counter right there. And I want to get into a couple news stories. I'll tell you who I have coming up in my segment today. I've got a musician who we've put 2 of his videos on Infowars.com. He's a musician / video editor, graphics designer, artist, and he was also in the reporter contest. And I think his work's very understated, but also very in your face, and kind of reminds me of those Schoolhouse Rock videos that I used to watch when I was a kid, in the way it throws out the images and the words and really makes you think. Because that's what I liked about the Schoolhouse Rock back in the day, was it kind of made you think about what goes on. It wasn't just a cartoon, wasn't just like a, some schlock thing like Thundar the Barbarian. Anyway, we're gonna have Josh Owens on first, and then at about 7:30, bottom of the hour, I'm gonna have in studio Linda Green, who's an activist with Fluoride Free Austin, and we're gonna talk about her struggle. She's been doing this for about 4 years or so, really fighting the fight locally to get fluoride out of our water supply, and she's really going up against a mayor and a city council that will laugh at her, dismiss her and her organization. And these people make continued, repeated attempts to get fluoride out of the Austin water supply. And we're also going to show some camera footage inside one of the water treatment plants. And so you'll see for yourself what they actually put in our water supply, where they keep it, and the MSDS that they actually label it on the side. On the side of, you can see what it is right there. And I think it's going to surprise you if you've never seen this footage before. It truly is amazing. Then at about 8 a.m., a little bit after that, I'm going to bring up Libertarian candidate for Congress Betsy Dewey out of District 25. She was on our show on the Nightly News a few weeks ago. And I said, all right, 3 minutes, tell everybody out there about Betsy Dewey, go. And she felt she didn't really say what she really wanted to say at that point. And she sent me an email saying, hey, I really enjoyed being on the show, but I really don't think I hit the mark on that speech. And so with the Money Bomb coming up, I had 2 hours. I said, I tell you what, I'll get you back up here and I will let you make your speech to everybody who's up at 7 a.m. or I guess 8 a.m. by that time in the morning. And so she'll be on to do that. And then I'm going to play some other little video excerpts of things I've done. I went to a pretty interesting music festival, Utopia Fest, so I'll do a little review of that. But first I want to cover just a couple stories. I got up this morning listening to Syria Girl. And actually, I just took a little nap here in the office. I went to bed during Dan Badondi's segment with, I think it was William Schnobel. Very interesting interview, and I wish I could have caught the whole thing, but I did have to get a little bit of sleep. But let's start off with this one. This is a Steve Watson story. I'll put it right here for the overhead cam, if that's good, or over here. Yeah, there we go. Pakistan Interior Minister, 80% killed by drones are innocent. Just 2% are militant leaders. Pakistan's Interior Minister stated Wednesday that up to 8 out of 10 people killed in U.S. drone strikes inside his country are completely innocent civilians, repeating a plea he made to the U.S. a fortnight ago to allow Pakistani authorities to oversee drone activity. Oh, they'll never allow that. Malik told reporters that only 20% of those killed in drone attacks were militants. 2,300 people killed in 333 airstrikes is what he said the total was. And 96 of those drone strikes were cross-border attacks that were launched from Afghanistan. He believes hundreds of children have been killed in these drone attacks. And this is all in our name, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone out there, we're all complicit in this because we are not making our government stop. We're allowing them to operate wars on several fronts. We are allowing them to do this in our name, and it's truly, truly disgusting. And then we have these drones, and they're not even killing the people that they're supposed to be going after. They're killing, well, mainly innocent civilians. And that's truly disgusting. That's a Steve Watson article on Infowars.com. The headline, Pakistan Interior Minister, 80% killed by drones are innocents. And that headline shocked me. Here's a headline that we started covering a couple days ago on the Infowars Nightly News. It was on Wednesday night, actually. This was kind of a breaking news story. And I gave it to Jakari. I said, hey, you got to cover this. And then we also have to show the other instances where the FBI is basically getting people and entrapping them into these weird bomb plots that ordinarily these people would not have done this on their own. They don't have either the mental capacity, the money, the connections. But then suddenly an FBI informant appears who's got it all right here. Hey, look, I've got the bomb. I've got the keys. I've got the cell phone detonator right here. Just take it. Take it. You don't like the U.S., do you? And they give these guys this stuff, and they put them on these missions. And then thank God the FBI is on it because they're able to bust it because their informants are running the operation the whole time. This headline by Kurt Nimmo, FBI entraps witless patsy in Federal Reserve bombing plot. Federal authorities in New York have arrested a Bangladeshi man with overseas connections to al-Qaeda who planned to blow up the Federal Reserve. And they say this man, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name at this time in the morning, was provided with inert explosives by federal agents and closely monitored by the FBI as he tried to act out his plot, according to the Associated Press. Federal prosecutors said Nafis had proposed several spots for his attack, including the New York Stock Exchange, and a letter claiming responsibility for the Federal Reserve plot. He said he wanted to destroy America. Well, there you go. They get a guy off the boat. And they, who knows what they do? They could feed him, they could drug him. Who knows how these guys get into this situation? But it's interesting. And RT reported last August, and they're talking about a Mother Jones report. The report reveals that the FBI regularly infiltrates communities where they suspect terrorist-minded individuals to be engaging with others. Regardless of their intentions, agents are sent in to converse within the community, find suspects that could potentially carry out lone wolf attacks, because that's the narrative. It's going to be lone wolf attacks from inside the U.S. But, you know, usually it's not even Muslims. It's Americans, people who own guns. It's those type of people who they're going to go after. By providing weaponry, funds, and a plan, FBI-directed agents will encourage otherwise unwilling participants to plot out terrorist attacks only to bust them before the events fully materialize. And RT reported that last August. And you can check out Wednesday's edition of the InfoWars Nightly News. Jakari Jackson really breaks it down how this has been happening. You know, you could make a case pretty much every terrorist attack, but all the way to the first New York Trade Center bombing, where they the FBI actually cooked the bomb, got the drivers, pretty much got them into position. And luckily, one of the guys who was involved in the incident was able to make tapes of this. And we've played them on this show before. It's truly amazing what our government engages in. I really did a lot of looking into the underwear bomber incident. I was making Police State 4 back when I started. It was within the first year. And as we were making it, the underwear bomber plot happened. And as we started to get more information just within the first few days, and then having a witness who came on the show, Kurt Haskell, and really just lay out what he saw, and then the subsequent cover-up that he was able to witness. You know, I told Alex, I said, we have to add this to Police State 4. This is what the police state is. It's creating these situations, putting people into them so it has a face. And, you know, Abdul Muttalib's face was everywhere, all over the all over the mainstream media, day after day, the underwear bomber. And but luckily we had Michael Chertoff, I think it means son of the devil is what his name means in Russian. And he's there to sell us his body scanners for the company that he consults with. And now we have body scanners everywhere. We have TSA agents putting their hands in our pants and doing other gross things and really preying on the disabled. We played a video of mine where I'm going out passing out InfoWars glossy magazines for this little interoffice contest we were having. And it's real interesting. This guy came up to me and wanted me to leave the area for one of these concert staff people for this big concert. I was passing him out in front of the area, not even on technically the grounds. I was on a median in the street, and he didn't like that, but he wanted to come over and throw his power out. And I used a clip of this 71-year-old man who was describing his TSA kind of horrible situation where they made him stand up. He was in a wheelchair. He has a knee replacement. And they pulled his pants down. So he's standing there with his underwear, and he's like, "Can we go in a back room?" And he says the agent started beating on her chest, going, "I have power, I have power, I have power." And that's what those people do. And just that statement there, anytime we get into those situations around here in the office where we're dealing with those petty power situations, I start beating on my chest going, "I have power, I have power." And so I put that in the video. So anytime I see these situations with the TSA, I'm always reminded of that "I have power" moment that that anybody who's traveled has felt that, especially when dealing with the TSA. And I've got more news and more stuff coming up. We're going to be with you till 9 a.m. If you have not contributed yet, please log on to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com, or you can call in to donate at 1-888-253-3139. I know Michelle's in there now taking people's orders. There's also some of the shipping staff that have been working overnight. It's been a fun atmosphere here all overnight. It was a big party here till about 4 or 5 a.m. That's when I finally had to take a nap, and I woke up and there's hardly anybody here now. CJ's come in to work the new shift, and John Bound and Chris Alanis did a really good job, mainly taking us through that first, I'd say 20 hours. They really knocked it out of the park. Dan Badandi did a long overnight shift. And all this is being put up on, as far as I know, Prison Planet TV. You could go check it out. And if you're not a member of prisonplanet.tv, I would encourage you. We really are putting out a lot of information there each and every day. You can watch it live as it goes out, or you can download it, do what you want with it. We're just trying to get the word out. We put a lot of these videos on YouTube the next day. And, we've had a lot of talk about that. Do we put them out immediately? Do we wait a couple days? We just really want the information to get out there. And Prison Planet TV is an opportunity for you to really support us on a continual basis, all year long. And it's only $6 a month. So say you can't give $50 or $100 right now. What about $5.95 a month for a Prison Planet membership? You really are getting a lot. You've got all of Alex's movies that you can download and burn to DVD, or just, show to your friends. We just want the information to get out there. And let me tell you, since I've been here, I got here in February 2009, and although I had been awake a lot longer than that, I'd kind of woken up to the two-party system in college, and then from there, the process of further awakening, a lot of it mainly due to Alex Jones. And I moved to Austin, Texas in '98, and I remember turning on the radio, and I found this talk station, and there's a guy yelling about the two-party system and how it's all corrupt. I'm like, man, this is what I've been reading. Who is this guy? And it's Alex Jones, and he's on Access, and he was everywhere, and he kept, hitting all these issues that the mainstream media just doesn't report. They don't really care about these. They don't want you to know about these issues. That's kind of like peeking behind the curtain. And so we're here to, kind of expose that stuff. Not kind of, we are exposing that stuff. We just had a great series of reports on Agenda 21 that Melissa Melton and Aaron Dykes put out. They also went to Whole Foods and kind of rooted out one of their CEOs out of hiding, not CEOs, but one of their executives to come out and, kind of confront them. And she didn't really say who she was till after the interview. But, you know, her responses in, you know, when Melissa Melton was questioning her about the CEOs giving to Tom Vilsack's wife, who's Tom Vilsack's basically in bed with Monsanto. You can easily make a case for that. And so why are these CEOs of Whole Foods, who are supposed to be, you know, this bastion of organic food, and they say, you know, all natural or 100% real ingredients on the side of their building, you know, they paint this on here, but in reality, they have GMOs, and they don't seem, you know, on the surface, they don't seem to be interested in having Prop 37 pass in California, because once it passes in California, the dominoes are going to fall. And so it's our duty to, you know, get behind the people of California and help Proposition 37 pass, because we need to have these foods labeled. It really, our lives depend on it. And you may not think that, you know, but type in GMO rats and in images into any search engine, and those were rats that were fed a lifetime supply of GMO corn, and they are covered with tumors. It's disgusting. I want to go to something as we get going here. I want to play a music video, and it's by Joshua Owens. We're going to bring him up right after this, and it's called Humanity is Rising. And this is a great song, especially early in the morning. So go ahead and turn up your radios right now, turn up your TVs, turn up your computers, and let's rock out to some good, hard, I guess it's kind of rock, folk rock music, and hopefully it'll awaken your spirit and get you fired up, especially now. We still got a long way to go in the Money Bomb. We're not even one day into this yet. That'll be at 11 a.m. So humanity is rising. We are awakening. We are beginning that process of realizing that what we know as society is really just a facade. It's a control mechanism to keep us thinking one way, to keep us doing one thing, and not questioning the system. And one person who has done that is my guest, Joshua Owens. And Joshua, are you there?
I am here.
It is great to hear your voice on this early morning. And you're in Georgia, right? So it's 8 a.m. your time, right?
Yeah. It is.
Excellent. So tell us about Humanity Rising. When did you write this song, and when did you decide to put it together into a music video?
Well, I wrote the song about 2 weeks before I posted the video. I wrote the song in about a day, and then I made the video in about 2 weeks, and I just threw it up pretty quickly.
It doesn't look like you threw it up, no pun intended. It looks like you really spent a lot of time in it. You got a lot of creativity. And did you watch a lot of Schoolhouse Rock as a kid?
You know, I didn't, but here lately I've been trying to think of different ways that, I guess, I don't know if necessarily I want to bring, if I've been thinking of different ways to bring people into the truth movement, or whatever you want to call it, but also at the same time while sort of reigniting a fire in people who are already in it and who already know what's going on and who hear these awful things day in and day out. And I mean, sometimes it gets to you. I would think oftentimes it gets to you. And I just think sometimes people respond differently to music. So, but no, Schoolhouse Rock, I started watching videos of that not that long ago, and you know, like the preamble, and I don't know, it just sort of made me excited to, I don't know, it's sort of like simplifying things, but yeah, so.
But it gives you enough information to really get the gist of something. You know, there was one called The Shot Heard Around the World.
Yeah.
And if not for that, I would have never known about Lexington and Concord. And then many years later, I'm actually standing there filming a reenactment on like one of the main anniversaries, and we're there, you know, interviewing a bunch of Oath Keepers. And it was really cool to finally, you know, see that when you're a kid and not really have the context of what happened, and seeing, you know, basically the British were coming for the people's guns, and some rebels stood up in front of them and said, no, you're not going any farther. We're here to stop you. And they didn't fire the first shot. I'm almost positive it had to be the Brits. You know, there's varying accounts of who fired first.
Yeah.
But, you know, history was definitely on our side in that one, because we did persevere mainly through lots of endurance. As they say, we didn't win on the battlefield. We win by just being on the battlefield every time there was a game. And that's kind of how we have to do it. We have to keep getting in people's faces, keep putting out the truth, keep talking to people. And you're really doing that. I really like what you're doing because music is a really good way to wake people up. It's, you know, especially your tunes, they're pretty catchy. They're easy to listen to. You've got a good voice. Did you play all the instruments in that?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, you're, you know, very talented person, and then be able to put it all together as a music video. You know, I do stuff like that, but I only play the bass. I don't really do, maybe a little keyboards here and there in my spare time, which I don't have much of anymore, having kids and everything. But let me get to what woke you up, Joshua, and then how did you discover InfoWars?
Well, I guess it was about 5 years ago, 2007. It was almost to the day. It was just it was the 26th of October, and I had some friends over from out of town, and they started talking to me about water fluoridation and 9/11, which obviously I knew about 9/11, but I'd never heard of Alex Jones, and they brought up Alex Jones. So later that night, I looked him up online. I found Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, and I watched the whole video that night, and it freaked me out, which it should have done. And I was up the rest of the night looking at videos on InfoWars, watching films. I think he had just come out with Endgame. And I guess figuratively, I've been awake ever since.
Yeah, and, you know, that's how it happens, people. You know, friends come over, start talking about how the real world is working. Somebody mentions Alex Jones. Here's this guy out in Texas who's yelling about it constantly, who's trying to get people awake and who's trying to get people out of that trance. And then there you go. It leads you down that rabbit hole. And, you know, you pretty much educate yourself at that point. All it takes is that, you know, that one push into the rabbit hole or that one here, take the pill, let's see what happens. And, you know, it wakes you up. And so what has been your process? Do you feel more empowered now that you know this information? Are you glad you know this information?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing that, you know, over and over again, especially with these false flags and these FBI entrapping people, they go over this stuff over and over again. I didn't even cover this article. It just came out. State Department granted New York terror plotter a student visa. So here we see the State Department again being involved, you know, in letting a supposed terrorist who had these connections to Al-Qaeda into the country. And the same thing they did with the underwear bomber. I've put out a couple videos on this, and you can watch the video of Undersecretary Patrick Kennedy, kind of him and haw as he talks about how they didn't pull anybody off this guy's trail because they wanted to see who his bigger network was, even though he didn't really have a bigger network. They knew it was him all along, and he was just there to be a plant. Who knows how his, you know, father may or may not have been involved being a big banker in Africa. But it just stinks to high heavens. What do you think about this new Fed terror plot?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like there's a manual and everything is done the same way. It's almost like you can just see what is happening and you can just immediately tell. It's like it clicks on like, well, this isn't right. Obviously the story they're telling us isn't true. And then now they're just coming out and just saying, well, yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to do with, well, the State Department, once again, doesn't catch anybody. We covered a story recently of a man who was flying to Hawaii to visit his wife. That's where they stopped to refuel. She's somewhere out in the Pacific coast. She's in the Navy. And this man's got shipping these TWIC cards where you have to be approved to work on a ship. Because there's a lot of security involved with that. You don't just walk on a ship here in the U.S. of A. You have to go through a vetting process. He just got a concealed carry permit, and then all of a sudden he's on a no-fly list, and he can't figure out why. He's trapped in Hawaii right now, and I believe David Knight is going to have an update from him tonight, so be sure and stay tuned for that. He's going to be coming up a little bit later. In fact, I'll look that up right here and let you know. David Knight will be up, looks like he's coming up at 11 p.m. tonight, so he'll be ending the day as I'm beginning the day, along with Syrian Girl and Dan Badandi. And Russell Dowden had a pretty interesting interview with Phil Berg. If you didn't catch that, you can catch it on the archives. Joshua, what's going to come next? Are you working on any new songs now? We played another one. We're going to play that one coming out of this interview. But what's on the future plate for you right now?
Yeah, I have a couple more songs I'm working on, which as soon as I'm done with those, I'm going to start doing videos for them. And I guess just see what happens. I mean, I really appreciate you guys putting up the videos, getting them out to more people. I wanted to mention this. I thought this was interesting. I was looking at InfoWars yesterday, and I saw an article by Anthony Gucciardi. I think it was originally on Natural Society.
Yeah.
Scientist, creativity is part of a mental illness.
Right, exactly. I saw that one this morning too, and I almost printed that one out, and I couldn't believe it. Creativity is part of a mental. Maybe it is. I'm a little obsessive compulsive about some things. There are certain things that have to be a certain way sometimes, but I also feel I'm a pretty creative person when it comes down to it, and so that's very interesting. So now we're all. Tell us about this article. What struck you about it?
Well, the title struck me. But basically it says if you like to express yourself through painting, writing, music, anything creative, a creative outlet, then now according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, you have a mental illness, which contains over 900 pages of mental disorders, which even the person who wrote, the lead editor of the DSM, the fourth version of that's coming out, says that there is no definition of mental disorders. So it's just ways to get people on medication and to dumb people down even more.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head there. That's all it is. We, myself and Jason Douglas flew up to Cincinnati, Ohio about a year and a half ago and interviewed Bruce Levine, who's he's a psychologist, and he deals with a lot of kids, and he is not one for pushing drugs on kids, big pharma drugs. He tries to get them off of those because he says, and his big thing was these DSM books, because they say one thing is a mental disorder for years and years, and then through political pressure or corporate pressure, it suddenly doesn't become a mental illness. And they're over and over again, all they do is try to figure out ways to get people drugged. And this is something that I guess President Bush started. We were covering that earlier on a nightly news with Alex, where it's this Bush New Freedom Initiative, where they want to test everybody for mental illnesses, do all this screening. But really, it's not really screening. It's a net, and I guess it is a screen in a certain way, but it's a net to catch you and get at least half the population on psychotropic drugs in one form or another, to create these lifelong customers, because these are pills that once you get on them, you can't just stop. You have to either wean yourself on them or take other ones for the side effects. It's really disgusting. And what kind of issues are you most interested in when you get on InfoWars and check out the information? What's the kind of stuff that really pushes your buttons?
There's a lot of things, but I mean, GMOs, that issue, vaccines. I mean, when you hear that kids are being vaccinated at school without parental consent, and then there is thimerosal, mercury in vaccines, there is MSG, there is
cow fetal cells or bovine fetal cells.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in these things. I've done a lot of looking into the vaccine issue. I've got 2 kids, and let me tell you, I got the insert of every vaccine they wanted to inject my children with. And on every single one of them, you can look this up, it says, has not been tested for cancerous or mutagenic potential on every vaccine insert. Not the little paper that they give you, but the insert that comes folded up with it. Has not been tested for cancerous or mutagenic potential. Those words alone are enough to make me go, no, thank you. I don't want anything that you haven't tested to see if it causes cancer, because there's enough stuff out there that causes cancer that you say is good for us, which is going to take us to our next video, which is called Good For You. Why don't you tell us about this song?
This is a song that sort of stemmed, I mean, it stemmed from the joke that is the coming up presidential election. And I just think a lot of people get interested in politics around this time period. But, and you talk to people, and people even say, well, yeah, I mean, I know that what they're saying probably isn't going to be what they're saying after they get elected. And it's all, I don't know, it just came from sort of anger. So that's why it's, I'm being sarcastic about it's good for you, because fluoride in your water is not good for you. These poisons in vaccines not good for you. The poisons in food is not good for you. And I guess sometimes you get so angry about things that you just sort of have to laugh.
Or give a battle cry. Yeah! Just like
Exactly.
that. That'll wake you up in the morning. You know, you get up, you see this information over and over again. You know the system is just pushing poison on us left and right from every direction. And it really makes me mad. And I'm really glad to see you taking that anger and putting it into a creative outlet. And we need more people to do this. We don't just need one Joshua Owens out there. We need lots of them. Joshua, let me ask you about, you know, the money bomb. How important is it for alternative types of news to get out there? How important is it for people to contribute to the money bomb today?
Oh, it's extremely important. Extremely important. I can't stress how important it is, because I don't know if I would be where I am, the knowledge that I have now, if it wasn't for Alex Jones and the InfoWars team. I mean, millions of people wouldn't be awake to certain things that are going on, like with the Federal Reserve or GMOs or anything we've been talking about. I may not even be talking about this right now. And I mean, it's not like it's just a platform for people to get to go and to listen to information that's important. I mean, this could end up saving people's lives. I mean, it can inform people, like what we were talking about vaccines. It can inform people to make better decisions about their children. I mean, that's huge. So, I mean, yeah, you definitely need to go, and you definitely need to donate money, and you definitely need to listen, and you need to send people over to InfoWars. I mean, it's more important than I can even say.
Spreading the word is bigger than even donating, but donate if you can. Go to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. You know, 10, 20, 100, 1,000. We do have, if you go to, let's see, $365, you get the Money Bomb T-shirt. If you do 500, you get the T-shirt and 5 DVDs. And if you go to 1,000, you get the DVD, the T-shirt, and it's the Money Bomb T-shirt. It's that camo with the orange look. Dan was wearing it earlier. And you also get a megaphone, which is now being auctioned off. I believe that megaphone is being auctioned on eBay. One of them, we have a few of them that Alex has signed and put its own unique message on it. It looks like it's going over $500 right now, and you can get to those links to the eBay auctions. We have a lot of cool items there, right on the Money Bomb page, InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. Any way you can support us, if you can get a PPTV membership, it all helps. It all helps in the fight. I've really seen this operation grow since I've been here. I'm now one of the elder statesmen of this operation, and there's definitely more people who've come after me than have been before me, and it's really cool to bring people in from all over the United States and continue this fight. And Josh, we're going to go out now with a song called Good For You. It's another wake me up song. I really think this is a good one, although Humanity is Rising right now is my favorite. And just to let everybody know, I put his YouTube title name up there. You can go there, and you can also download these songs if you want to. And what I think is cool, you have a pay whatever you want type price. And I think that's a pretty cool thing because it's like giving it away, but hey, if you really want to contribute, please do. And that's how I think the future of media is going. You know, support it if you really like it, if you're a real fan, if you want to see it continue, but also get it out and spread the word, because that's how we wake up more people, by spreading the word. Word of mouth is more powerful than any form of advertising out there. Josh, I'm going to give you the final comments, and we're going to go to your video.
I just want to say thank you guys for having me on. Thank you guys for putting my video out. One thing I wanted to say that's really, really great about InfoWars is that there are so many different kinds of people that you guys have on that cater to, well, it doesn't really cater to anybody, but it reaches so many different people on so many different levels. So I just wanted to end with, I know David Icke is coming up in a little bit, which, you know, some people disagree with him. I'm not saying I disagree with everything he says, but, you know, it's all about speaking the truth and trying to get out there and understand different things. But I read a quote from him the other day that says, you can dam a stream and you can dam a river, but you can't dam a tidal wave. And you can suppress humanity and goodness and justice and discernment in certain settings, and we see that all the time. But with those involved in this movement, we are the tidal wave, and you can't dam us. You can't dam the truth. So thank you guys so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on, and you're right, and David Icke is right. You cannot dam the truth, because it will seep through the cracks, because any time the truth has the ability to seep through and get some light and grow up like that weed in the sidewalk, it will do it. And with that, we're going to go to Josh's other video that we posted a few months back. check those videos out. We have there's 2 articles. One is music video, talks about the left-right paradigm, and the other one is music video, talks about the rise of the robots. I thought it seemed like he had gotten the latest issue of InfoWars magazine, which is right here, and you can get a subscription. I did a little video passing these out. It was a lot of fun. That is online. We should have an article coming out today about that contest. All right, and we are back live. It is the 2012 InfoWars MoneyBomb. 2 days to wake up the world. You can contribute at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. You can also call 888-253-3139. And I will give out the call-in number in a second, and we will be able to take calls. I especially want to do that in the next hour. We got about 15 minutes left in this hour, and I want to bring up Linda Green, who is a activist that I've met a couple years ago when I was touring a fluoride treatment plant that she was involved with in getting us involved in. She comes here to the office a lot and gives us a lot of information on fluoride. She's been an activist for a long time. And so welcome to the show, Linda.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much for having me here, because one of the reasons that I helped co-found Fluoride Free Austin is because of Alex, and listening to Alex talk about fluoride over and over and over again.
Kind of hard to believe, isn't it, that our government is mandating that they put a roach poison in our water, isn't it? Isn't that crazy?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the battle's been going on for here in Austin alone for over 40 years. And we consider it a David and Goliath type of battle, especially since it seems that the CDC and the Pew Charitable Trust and City Council and the ADA are all focusing on Austin and squashing us in every which way they can. But we are not going to give up. And we so support this money bomb because Alex is a resource for people to do the same thing in all their communities. We've had successes in Marble Falls, College Station, little towns where people, Alex says, go down to your city hall and do it. Go down to your city hall and go to fluoridefreeaustin.com and get your resources and take action.
Yeah, arm yourself with the facts. The facts are there. There's no denying it. You know, you brought in these little pamphlets here. I looked just on the back. Copyright November 1968. And what does it say? Fluoridation. And it talks about all the bad things, the stuff we've been talking about. I mean, this isn't new. This isn't new science here. I mean, we're just looking at, they've been able to suppress that information by going around. I was watching some videos this morning because I was thinking about putting something together, but I'm like, you know, I really need to just concentrate on, you know, keeping the money bomb going and helping people out where they need to. So I didn't get a chance to do that, but every one of them, you see these scientists, it's safe and effective. It's safe and effective. It's safe and effective over and over again. What types of pitfalls have you encountered, or I guess blocks, you know, because you're not stopping. I can tell you're going to keep fighting this until it's overturned. But like, you know, you've been met with city council people who kind of laugh at you, who walk away while you're talking. Tell us about some of those things.
Well, for instance, Alex had interviewed Dr. Paul Connett, and we invited Dr. Paul Connett to come down and speak in front of our city council. And during his 3-minute speech before city council, the mayor engaged in a little chit-chat with the city attorney next to him. And what a rude way to treat Professor Emeritus at a university and who wrote this book, The Case Against Fluoride, How Hazardous Waste Ended Up in Our Drinking Water and the Bad Science and Powerful Politics That Keep It There. And Dr. Connett told me himself that the interview that you did was one of the best that he's ever been privileged to have.
And that was right as we built the InfoWars, the new studio, thanks to the last 2 money bombs helped us get it over there. And we had Dr. Connett coming in. I actually shot an interview with him there, and then I went to Hunston-Tillotson College where he was giving a speech. And he really is a good speaker. He knows how to come out and address the issue and then take the sometimes hard to understand, maybe, you know, chemical terms of how much is fluoride, you know, how much fluoride is actually in our water. And, you know, he describes to where just 1 cup, you're getting what they say is a lethal dose if you were to eat it out of your toothpaste.
Yeah.
I mean, totally crazy. And the guys were just showing some of that video from some hidden camera footage that appeared after this tour. That was really, really eye-opening, where we saw, and let's run Fluoride 1 first, where I remember going up to this pump station where they actually put the fluoride into these giant tanks, and you could see the powdered concrete. Yeah, back that up to the beginning, guys. You can see the other side of that. You can really see, yeah, so there's some shots of, you know, just inside the plant. And then it goes to where the fluoride is hooked up to be deposited into giant tanks. And you can see the staining it does to this concrete. This is solid old concrete. This is, and look at this. I mean, these are, look at those deposits there, where this is the poison that they put in at the rate of 9 gallons per hour into our water supply. And that's what it does when it drips. It actually powders the concrete there. And then later on, we went inside to see the giant tanks. And what really, really woke me up, and if you guys want to go to the next clip, the front of the building, it has the MSDS of 3 of human reactivity, which is really bad. It can cause serious, lifelong lasting effects. But then you go inside, and there you're going to see the number. There's the 3 on the outside, and she's explaining how it's, you know, it's only a 3. But you go in and look at the tanks, and it's got a 4 on the tanks, which is do not come into contact with humans because it can cause death. Death.
And one of the water treatment plant was that the board, the buttons and bells and whistles, the automated system was also housed outdoors, protected a bit by some cement walls, but it was built in the 80s, and they don't maintain. They say they have no cost for maintaining.
Right, it just magically maintains itself. Go to those clips again. You could. I want you guys to stop on the 4 for the MSDS that's actually on the side of the tanks. If you could stop it when you get there, I mean, that I think is truly amazing. You just fast forward right here a little bit, and you'll see on the plastic tanks that they house this in, and these are huge tanks where they just pump this stuff in. There's one, look at that, 4 for human reactivity. Now you go look up on your MSDS scale, just type it into any search engine, what 4 on the MSDS scale is for human reactivity. Go read that out there, and you're going to be surprised, because it ain't, hey, you should be eating this, people. It's run the other direction. There's no other, that's the worst it can be, in fact. Isn't that amazing? That they put it in our water.
And and
they tell us it's for our teeth.
And they make it appear, and when I say they, I mean the media, the ADA, the CDC, the Health and Human Services Department, make it appear that all they're doing is adding this innocuous fluoride to the water. It's just like calcium fluoride found in our rivers.
Safe and effective.
Absolutely is not.
It's exactly
a waste product, a highly caustic waste product that results from the phosphate fertilizer industry, big agri, big business, big medicine, big pharma. It's all wrapped up in this nice little package. But the difference between going back 40 years ago, when all they had were mimeograph machines, is now we have InfoWars, we have Alex on the radio, and
we have high quality videos that
texting
we can put out.
And emailing, and people, friends, families, our communities can come together and take actions. Like Alex says, go down to City Hall, and that's what we've been doing for 4 years. And the unfortunate part of it, too, is that the media in general, all our local TV stations, ignore us. We've given them all this information that you have used, and it falls on their deaf ears. Once in a blue moon, they'll toss us a bone.
Right.
But if you're at InfoWars, or if you listen to Alex on the radio, you're getting about the only truth about fluoride that's out there. And we need to share this with our friends and families. And I so support donating not only your money, but your time to your City Hall, to your Health and Human Services. Take actions. And we may be fighting this battle for a lot longer. But right now, for instance, we've got a fluoride-free Houston.
I saw the email.
I think it results from maybe spreading the news of our successes here.
And you've got a council person there who's open to the idea of getting fluoride out of the water.
Yes, they have Councilman Christie, so that he's a chiropractor. So we need to get people in our city council too
Our city council doesn't have time for that, though. They're too busy destroying Barton Springs. So if you can come back later with your pesky little fluoridation problem, I mean, these people are disgusting. And I like this on your little pamphlet here. Today, fluoridation is banned nationally in Austria, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Norway, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland.
And that was 40 years ago. Now, 95% of Europe has looked at the facts and said no more fluoride. Another thing that we're fighting is, besides the media ignoring us, is the Pew Charitable Trust.
Oh,
which
yeah.
People think, oh, the Pew Charitable Trust, they do so many good things. You see them on public television, sponsoring public television, and they are doing everything they can to suppress the truth and actually are taking actions to encourage city councils, Austin and Portland as well, to keep fluoridating. And so the topic of my next 3-minute speech on November 1st at City Council is, who is Pew? And why are they hell-bent on squashing and quashing the anti-fluoride movement? And our own Councilman Doggett's wife, Libby Doggett, wrote to the City Council and encouraged them to keep fluoridating on behalf of the Pew Foundation. So maybe we need to look into that.
And maybe we should keep re-electing Lloyd Doggett because he really cares for us, right?
Yeah, that's another thing. Even though people think that voting doesn't count, and we do know that there's voting machines that are manipulated, we still have to support paper ballots and Bev Harris and the
black box voting.
Issue. Like, I think Alex is asking us to pick a project. It may not be fluoride. It might be food additives, or it might be GMO, or it might be paper ballots, might be vaccines. But I would say use InfoWars, use Alex's information, and give your money and your time to one issue.
I can't tell you how many times in putting together the nightly news that I have just gone back to InfoWars, typed in some keyword searches, and found hundreds of articles that we've written that link back to mainstream articles. So it's not just, well, InfoWars said it. No, it's Washington Times, it's New York Times, it's Washington Post, it's all over the place. It's BBC, it's whoever else is out there, you know, those mainstream media sources where they kind of let the truth slip for a little bit, and then they close the door and say, oh, no, we never said that, but we have it. And then they, you know, they erase those things off their websites, but then we have it. And that's why it is important to definitely give to the Money Bomb and find your cause, because there are a lot of causes out there. It's not just one thing. It's not just water fluoridation. It's not just GMOs. It's not just, you know, drone attacks, which are going to be coming pretty soon. I guess if you don't like fluoridation, they can send the drones to get us.
Exactly.
You know, they kill in Pakistan, they kill 80% of the people they kill are innocent. And there's no trial for these people. There's no due process. It's just hell from above coming down and raining on them. How would we feel if Mexico was flying drones into our country and killing people? Exactly. We would be invading them right now. I can't believe that the Pakistanis have not engaged us in that, and that they're still letting us use their roads. I mean, it's amazing that that goes on, and they just sit by and let it happen. And it just shows that we really do have that evil empire influence still today.
And you do have impact on other media, I think, too. And
I agree.
Like you said, sometimes the topic comes up in mainstream media. For example, on January 7, 2011, the FDA and I believe the CDC reported that ingesting fluoride causes brittle bones and risk of bone damage. And they cited the 2006 National Research Council study that was commissioned by our own government, linking fluoride to thyroid disease, rare forms of bone cancer. And then that story disappeared the very next day when there was that horrible shooting out in Arizona, and the congresswoman was shot. But that story did come out on the nightly news, and even one of our local dentists here, who's opposed to water fluoridation, Dr. Griffin Cole, was on the news that night. You can go to YouTube. FedGov says too much fluoride.
And we've had Dr. Cole on here a couple times, Laura Presley, because they're also fighting. There's a lot of people fighting this fight right now, and it is a fight that needs a lot of people. And it's and you know, to see Dr. Connick come out and just give his time freely to really push this issue because he says in his interview, at first my wife showed me some information. I'm like, I don't want to see this information. Those are kooky people. And then he started looking at it. You know what? All we have to do is turn this off. And the reason we don't is money. There's a lot of money behind this. You guys are fighting a lot of big money. And it really is a fight that needs a lot of people, needs a lot of grassroots effort. So tell us about Fluoride-Free Austin.
Well, we started about 4 years ago. Ray Nadler Olenek and I had both been down to our Brave New Books bookstore, and we bought a copy of The Fluoride Deception. And I think for my part, I bought it because Alex kept talking about fluoride, so I thought, well, I'm going to find out what this is all about. I actually thought that Austin, being such a cool green city, wouldn't even dream of fluoridating the water. And I'm really upset.
It's a green mask of evil that Austin has. Some things Austin's really good at, and they, you can tell they really do care about the people in some ways, and then in others, it's like it's this evil control mechanism that come this way to the gas. This, it's like this way to the gas, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean, they just really. They have it in for us, I think, especially this council and the ones before them and these mayors that steal people's land. I mean, it's just over and over again.
And Austin gives themselves awards for clean water.
Yeah.
They call it clean water when they add fluoride and chloramine to our water, which is a combination of Clorox and ammonia. So we were concerned about water, and largely because, our bodies are about 60% or more water. And so we figured this is a big deal, even though the media is ignoring it. And so we formed this small grassroots group, and we were joined by Dr. Neil, the doctor from the Sierra Club that Alex has also interviewed, Neil Carmen. And you have interviewed him, and he joined our group because he's a brilliant scientist that recognized how dangerous and toxic the fluoride is. It has lead, cadmium, arsenic in it.
And the nucleotides. He brought that up, that no one is even looking at, that where they go to these phosphate mines and they dig this stuff out, it's got radioactive particles in it.
It's just amazing that there's not as much of a public consciousness about it. I think maybe people think, oh, well, it's just parts per million. But parts per million is being linked to all these devastating diseases, and people with diabetes can't tolerate fluoride. There's pets and infants whose bodies are so much smaller, and yet we dose our water at one size dose fits all.
Exactly.
And that's devastating.
And these stores out there are pushing this fluoride water for infants, and they say nursery water, and it's really disturbing because all this is doing is brain damaging our little kids. And I just want to say something to the people out there. If you're brushing your teeth right now and you're using fluoridated toothpaste, look at the back of your toothpaste tube, and it says it's dangerous to eat this.
Do not swallow.
Yet, why do we drink it? And the amount that you're using to brush your teeth is the same amount of fluoride that's in an 8-ounce glass of water. Isn't that amazing? Yet it's a poison if you eat it in the toothpaste, which is even a higher grade of poison than what they put in our water.
And the poison that's in the toothpaste is sodium fluoride, which I believe is also a waste product of the aluminum industry. So it's toxic as well. On our website, Ray's done a lot of work with the help of a college student originally to build that website. And right now on our website, we not only post all of our 3-minute speeches, which everybody all over could share, and we also have a question that we're putting out to Austin citizens who are about in their 40s. Since they've been fluoridating our water for 40 years, we want to know how many people out there have dental fluorosis, which the CDC defines as anywhere from white lacy marks to erosion.
I've got it.
And they
gave my mom fluoride pills and told her it was to make my teeth stronger. That's what that's what the doctors told my mother.
So if you have anywhere from like significant brown or off-colored, maybe ivory-colored markings on your teeth, some of it's extreme. You can see examples of it on fluoridefreeaustin.com. Oh, that's another dirty little secret that I wanted to share with y'all is after Dr. Connett created his website, fluoridealert.org. Soon after that, the CDC created fluoridealert.com.
Oh, and I bet it's how it's safe and effective.
Yeah,
right?
It's awful. You know, if you search them there, they
so you type in fluoride alert, and that's what comes up first.
Fluoridealert.com. If you search that area, down near the bottom, I believe it is, they warn against people like us.
Oh, yeah. Those crazy people.
The Pew Foundation considers us a threat.
Yeah.
So all the more reason for Austin citizens to come out, speak up. You can take action on our website. There's a little section where you can take action. And Ray was smart enough to have fluoridefreeaustin.com, .org,
.tv, .us. You got to get them all these days because the imposters will sneak around you. I want to get that video ready, CJ, of fluoride part 1 and part 2. We're going to go to those. And because it is actually at the 8 o'clock hour, and I've got one more hour left. This first one's flown by. Linda Green, I want to thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much.
This has been great. And continue the fight. Don't stop. We're all behind you. And I really, when you came over the other day, I said, you know what, I'm going to get Linda Green in. And just to talk about this more, because you're somebody who's in the trenches, you are fighting, you've got your helmet on, you've got your M14, you're ready. You're ready for battle every day, and you take it to the enemy. And that's what we need. We need more people like you.
Thank you. And we appreciate every time you bring up the subject. Oh, and here's just one last little thing.
All right.
From the 30s, they used to have these old-fashioned posters that said 19,000 plus dentists advise you smoke Viceroys. And then if you flip it over on here, this is like from the 1930s, 20,000 plus physicians say Luckies are less irritating. It's toasted. Well, there's a similarity here where dentists and doctors were pushing cigarette smoking, and now it's dentists and doctors and the CDC pushing the fluoride.
4 to 5 dentists agree.
And we are going to win.
I agree.
With your help.
It's not going to tell you much. People have been fighting this, and it's coming down everywhere. I talk to fluoride activists all over. I share emails with them. We get them on every once in a while. We post their articles because it is important to see those local victories, because this is really a local issue. Yeah. We're never going to get the government to say, turn it off. But each little spot across the United States, we're having victories.
Exactly.
And, you know, they're having victories too, but we're having them as well. And that's where it is. And that's why we have to keep continuing. Let's go to that video now. And when we come back, I'm going to give out the call-in number, and we're going to start taking calls. In fact, let me give out the call-in number now. Let's open up the phone lines, 877-789-ALEX. That's 877-789-ALEX. And we'll take some calls when we come back from this video. And we're going to have Libertarian candidate Betsy Dewey from U.S. District 25. She doesn't want your money, folks. She just wants your support. She's not taking any donations. She wants to give out a speech, and we're going to go to that right after this video. So stay tuned for more. It's the Infowars, MoneyBomb.com. All right. I hope you're awake out there. It's MoneyBomb 2012. I'm your host, Rob Dew, sitting in until the end of this hour, and we're going to have David Icke after that. So I will be sure and get off, give him plenty of time to get on. And I just want to, let people know out there that the fluoride battle really is an important one. And if you're not fighting it, and if you're not doing anything, that's a good place to start, is by getting fluoride out of your water supply. You saw in that video how one man went up to his Michigan City Council and got it put out with a 6-0 vote. And this is an issue you can attack on many fronts. One, do we want to medicate people without their consent? Two, there's no dose control. Three, we're paying to put this in our water, and it's not necessary. We've had, and in fact, Alex talked about the hundreds of chemicals that are added under the name fluoride. It's not even fluoride that they put in your water. It's hydrofluorosilicic acid that they put in your water. And go look that up. Go look up the MSDS on hydrofluorosilicic acid. I can't spell it right now, but it's a little too early in the morning. But there you go. Once again, if you want to contribute, let's see what we're up to now. We're up to 112,000, maybe even more after I refresh. Still 112,000 right now. Our goal is $1 million, so we've got a long way to go today. We brought in lots of different speakers, lots of different people out there. And we really want to see you out there contribute to this money bomb, because this is how we fund ourselves. This is how we're going to take it to the next level to make it more worldwide than it already is. We're going to put those satellite uplinks out there where they can't be stopped by people, you know, with their hand on the gate of, you know, TV signal that's going through. This is going to beam to people wherever they live and wherever they have a satellite to grab it. So we really do need your support. We appreciate your support. Please spread the word. Alex's daytime show is getting bigger and bigger now that we've seen Neil Bortz and Michael Wiener Savage leave the airwaves. You know, there's room for Alex to come in. People are looking for an alternative to Rush, and I believe definitely Alex Jones is that. And without further ado, let's bring up my friend Betsy Dewey, who is running for District 25. She's running as a Libertarian candidate for U.S. Congress, and she wanted to come back on because we had her on the nightly news, and I kind of put her on the spot, said, what do you want to tell the people out there? Go. And she felt like she didn't really convey all the things she wanted to say. So, hey, Betsy, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Rob. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to hear you and see you out there in on the Skype world. I love Skype because we can just bring people in from wherever. We had a guest from Georgia earlier today. Before you get to your speech, tell us why you're not taking donations anymore.
Well, probably most people aren't aware that when you're running for Congress or running for any federal office, once you've reached a $5,000 mark, then you have to turn in all the paperwork about who the people are that gave you the money, where you spent it, and also, something I was unaware of, you have to then turn in your last 2 years of your personal finances. And my campaign was just about to reach the $5,000 mark, which it's kind of funny. I didn't know that we would. And one of my opponents has $2.5 million. If someone had made a $50,000 donation or a $100,000 donation, or if there had been a super PAC opened up for Betsy Dewey, and I don't know how all that works exactly, but it would have been different. But I was just about to go over the mark by, $100 or $200. And so all of this work, and then, it's not like I have anything to hide, but just having my information be public because of a couple $100, I'd rather people send the money to InfoWars.
There you go. And definitely we'll take your money and we will put it to good use, just as if Betsy Dewey was to get into Congress. She should be the first Libertarian elected to Congress, which would be amazing, because I think we do need to start injecting Libertarian ideas into this socialist state that we're going under real quickly. And so, Betsy, are you ready to give your speech that you were telling me about? All right, well, let's put the camera back on Betsy and go for it. Here's your chance to tell whoever's out there listening, why should they vote for Betsy Dewey, or why should they vote in general, at least for a third party? Go for it.
Tyranny, oppression, and heavy taxes are what led to the American Revolution and to our Bill of Rights, which is the only document in the brutal history of mankind that guarantees you your freedom. If you take a small look at history, you will see that every single government, regardless of the type of government, always becomes oppressive. Our government, the one that we created and we control, not the other way around, is regrettably run by a corrupt two-party system. And both of these parties, no matter what they say, have the same agenda. And that is to control us. It's for government to be big and powerful and oppressive. The Republicans, with the exception of Ron Paul, never mention ending these wars. The Democrats truly believe that if we spend way beyond our means, that we can somehow create a utopia. If you like surveillance, heavy taxes, heavy spending, murder by a drone, executive orders that completely bypass our Congress and our Constitution, then go ahead and vote the way you always have. Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of tyrants and patriots. But if you want a bloodless revolution for which there is still time, then you'll vote Libertarian. this young political party has no agenda other than that of our founding fathers: minimal government and individual freedom. The Libertarian Party is the party of the American people. And if the American people can recognize that, then we can take our country back. The reason that you should vote Libertarian, especially on the local and state level, just go ahead and bring in new people with new ideas, especially Libertarians, is because this country belongs to you, not to the government. That's my little speech.
And if you agree with those sentiments and you live in District 25, which has been gerrymandered beyond belief, vote Libertarian and for candidate Betsy Dewey. That's my plug for Betsy. And, you know, she doesn't want your money anymore. She's stopped the donations. And she would definitely, she said just now, you know, send your money to us. We'll take it. We'll spend it. We will make it happen. And we will get more libertarian, more freedom, more liberty ideas out there to the rest of the world, because it is a worldwide revolution that we're in right now. This is not just one country's melting down at this point. They're attacking us on all levels, the New World Order is. Betsy, when did you first wake up, and when did you discover InfoWars?
Oh, I've been listening now and then for several years. I listen when I'm in the car, and that's from time to time when Alex is on. And so I've enjoyed InfoWars. I have to admit that I can't listen to it all the time because I start looking around wondering if somebody's watching me. But I think that the information that comes out through this show is amazing. And just the fact that y'all are aware of everything I'm aware of, way more than what I'm aware of. You know, NDAA is what caused me to run, because it just absolutely made me so mad that our government would think that just right in front of our very eyes they could pass something that would destroy part of our Bill of Rights. This idea that we should have a fair trial before we spend time in prison. And I don't know, did you hear about Wade Hicks, who's stuck in Oahu because he's on a no-fly list now?
Oh yeah, we helped break that story along with Douglas Hagman. We interviewed him on the nightly news, and yeah, here's a guy who was just trying to go see his wife, and he's got all these other credentials where he's gone through the Homeland Security TSA apparatus and has had no problems, but all of a sudden he's on a no-fly list. And he was alluding to the fact that they have a preppers group, and they think they outed somebody who they followed, and later he went and pulled into a DHS parking lot and parked in the handicap spot, he said in the interview. So he thinks it's payback for that. That was the reason he got on the list, because they asked the guy not to come back anymore because he was saying a lot of crazy things, and a lot of stuff that he said didn't add up. So what's your impression of that, of the Hicks situation?
Well, I mean, I was just shocked that a law-abiding citizen who is a concealed carry, you know, he's had his background checked. He's been recently married to a woman in the U.S. Navy, and that they would let him fly to Hawaii, and then all of a sudden he's on a no-fly list. And he's not 100% sure why. I guess you know more about it than I do. But the first thing I saw was that he was very outspoken about the NDAA ruling, and the fact that he would be stuck on an island in the middle of the Pacific is unbelievable.
It's sort of like they exiled him. You know, it's like, okay, you don't like it, you got to stay in Hawaii now, which wouldn't be a bad place to live, I guess. But you know, he can't see his wife. He's stuck in the middle of nowhere. You know, essentially, he can't go either way.
Well, and I mean, my favorite thing in the world is our Bill of Rights. And if you haven't read it in a while, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the listeners. You need to go and just read the Bill of Rights. It's one page. It guarantees you the rights that you have. And one of those is the right to free speech. We have the right in this country. It was in our First Amendment that we can speak out. And that doesn't mean go out and tell your neighbor, you know, what you think of him. It does. But what it really means is that we can speak out against our government if we don't like it. And if they're going to start, like you said, exiling you in Hawaii if you speak out against the NDAA, I mean, how many people are going to stop speaking out? That's what that's what irritates me so badly, is that it's really, it's a sign to people. And I want all of us to come out in numbers against all of these egregious
It's usurpations of power, and it's mainly government gone wild is what we have. We have a government that has way too much money. They are spending on way too many things that they have no business spending it on, and we have the duty to call them out when they do it, and especially with this stuff like this Benghazi attack where they came out and said it was just, oh, it was spontaneous. Well, it turns out, no, these guys have been planning. They've been casing the situation. The ambassador who was killed was a gun runner, essentially, and, you know, he just got caught up, I guess, with the wrong crowd, or he gave guns to the wrong group. I mean, just crazy stuff. And our government just lies after lies after lies after lies, and it really is disturbing and that we go on this all over and over again. Hey, Betsy, if people want to volunteer to help out your cause and your candidacy, where do they go?
Well, you can go to my website and shoot an email over to the campaign. We could use people on the ground handing out flyers. We can put up more yard signs, and we can make phone calls. It would take a lot of money to get those big, huge signs out there. And like you said, I'm not taking any more money. It's too close to the campaign end. But people can definitely help out. I can get you a phone list to call, or send you a really great flyer that you can make copies of and drop off at some of your neighbors' houses. It's mainly, my campaign is mainly about the libertarian movement and about getting back to our Constitution. The government has grown far too much, and it's in our lives and in our homes. And so the Libertarian Party is fiscally conservative, that keeps the government out of our wallets, and socially liberal, that keeps the government out of our lives. So if that resonates with you, you're probably a libertarian and don't know it. So go out there and vote libertarian and get involved in any of your local libertarian campaigns.
Excellent. Yeah, and of all the political parties, I definitely lean more libertarian than anything else, because it is fiscally conservative, socially liberal, and which spells freedom. That's all it does, is spell freedom. And Betsy's website is votebetsy.com. That's votebetsy.com. So go give her some support, volunteer for her. And if you wanted to send her any money, she's not taking donations, you can send it our way. I'll take those donations in her name. Betsy, thanks for coming on. We really do appreciate it. And good luck in the election, and campaign hard, because it would be great to see somebody other than a Democrat or a Republican get in. And I think Texas is a good place to start this movement of electing freedom-minded people, because, after all, we're the Lone Star State.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, guys.
All right, you have a good one. And there you go. It's just that easy. That's how we do things here at InfoWars. We find the people out there who may not necessarily have the biggest budgets, but it's the ideas. It's the ideas that they have that are bulletproof and that keep us going. I want to go over a couple more articles. I guess I got to. Do we have people on the line? Oh, let's. Who do we have first? We have Lou in Pennsylvania. Are you all ready to go to him? All right. Hey, Lou, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. I was really inspired by that guest you had about fluoride.
Oh, yeah, Linda Green. She's great.
Yeah, so this is an idea that I was inspired by, and that is, I don't know if it needs its own money bomb or whether resources could go in this direction, but to have a channel or a local division of InfoWars that is focused on local news, local issues. It could be an Austin channel with its own website, YouTube channel, daily news updates, perhaps looking at the Texas as a local area. And I see this could be a way of having the tip of the spear, the thin edge of the wedge with this local information and news, where it's like a one place people can go who are interested in those local issues, and then you'd be setting the example for maybe other cities, parts of the country, to have their own channels. I just see it as maybe another way to spread the word.
I think that's a great idea, and really, where a place you can go to have your local channel is your local access. That's where Alex Jones started. You could go and find stuff from him back in the mid-'90s. And basically, he's sitting in front of a blue screen cloth with one light on him. He's got the telephone thing, and every once in a while, he pulls up an article. And that's how the old show was. And really, we haven't gone too far from that. It's just looks a little better, and we have HD cameras now. So I think that's a great place for people to start. And let me tell you this, Lou. We have this newspaper that we just started, InfoWars News, and what we want to do is give people the opportunity to franchise it out to their local areas. So we would send you the newspaper or say space for your local ads or even space for your local issues. And, you know, it's already mostly done. So you would just have to plug in a few articles, boom, you send it out there. And it's a great way for you to fund your operation by selling advertising, you know, doing it with a little blood, sweat, and tears. And let me tell you, there's an article here. I just saw it. And it was talking about how Newsweek is now going all digital, and basically and what are we doing? We're going back to print because we know print could still be alive, especially when it's print media of the truth. And it was a awesome feeling giving these out for free the other day at the Austin City Limits Music Festival. Lou, are you still there? Or where are you calling from in Pennsylvania?
I'm in Berks County. I'm north of Reading.
Okay. I used to live in PA. It's an interesting place. I have a lot of friends there. I wouldn't say I have a love-hate relationship, but I also got arrested there for filming The Police in Pittsburgh. And that does happen from time to time. But anyway, what other issues are you concerned about out there aside from fluoridation?
Well, the GMO business is really it seems like it's so insidious. We don't even know what we're eating, and I'm guilty of just eating whatever is convenient from the grocery store, and so I have this idea of beginning to take certain parts of my diet and just saying, okay, it's going to be organic, or I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat corn, or I'm not going to eat bread unless I am confident that it's coming from a source that I know where it's coming from.
There you go. And now you're seeing more options for people to go organic, which I think is a sign that the tide is turning, and especially with this Prop 37 in California. Lou, thanks for calling. I appreciate it. If you do have time, please call this number and donate to the Money Bomb, 888-253-3139. We surely do appreciate your support. And if you can't support us financially, please get the word out. And thanks for calling. And let's go to the next caller. We have Raj in California. Raj, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. How's it going?
Hey, you know, I'm very happy now. Now I'm looking at the clock. I wish I had another hour to go on because I have a lot more to talk about. But what's on your mind?
Nothing. I've just been, when I've been falling asleep and went to sleep a little bit, so I've had it on, and I've just turned off the audio, so I have it on my background on the computer and just keep it on. So it's been a great event so far. You know, I wish we raised more money, but we don't need Federal Reserve notes. We just need more active people like your different guests, that are on the fluoride fight, whatever it is. I decided to get on the GMO fight about a year ago, and I'm actually volunteering for the label GMOs, the California RightToKnow.org, the organization behind Proposition 37 in California.
Yeah, that's great.
And so we have a really big debate. I emailed the InfoWars, I think. I know you guys are really busy with all the money bombs, and I think I emailed writers at Infowars.com, but it's all good. There's a debate tomorrow, or actually today now because it's early in the morning, at 3 p.m. in Chapman University, the city of Orange. And this debate is going to include a panel with my friend John, and we got David Murphy from Food Democracy Now! On the Yes on 37 side, and I think we got a corporate shill FDA lawyer, and I think a couple other shills on the no side.
A smooth-talking lawyer who wants to poison you and your family.
Debate. You know, we're going to have a march before that, starting at 1 o'clock, and we're going to have signs and banners, and because they spent close to $40 million already, and it's really working. You know, we're volunteering everywhere at farmers markets, at the local beaches, wherever we can, and we have sign waves at the local street corner, and people are coming up to us lately and saying, because they're doing all types of marketing techniques to reach the voters. They're trying to mail, they're trying to email.
Oh, yeah. And then lie.
I got one myself from the no side saying that, there's exemptions. How can you label dog food, but you don't label beef?
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on that, and I think the polls are 50-50. So it just, I mean, nationally the poll says 91% support labeling. So it's kind of odd that, you know, all this money actually does work, and the polls have lowered down 50-50. So we are in a struggle for the last couple of weeks. So.
It does. They pull the wool over people's eyes. They play sleight of hand tricks. They don't really give you the full story. And I'm talking about the corporate whores like Monsanto and those ilk who work for them. And I hope those people sleep well at night, because they really are. They're poisoning their own family too. I hope they realize that. Raj,
you know, it's funny because I've actually went to a recent event with Jeffrey M. Smith, and he realized that the crowd was a little bit more informed, so he was trying to give more of the juicy details on how their cafeterias and their management works. And he was telling a story how one of the heads of one of the locations in England was going to another country in Europe, and he said, hey, made a joke to the other guy on the phone. He's like, hey, are we going to eat that GMO? He's like, of course not. We're going to bust in our own organic. So that rumor of what people think that was false, I think you guys reported that since the 90s, right, that Monsanto's own cafeterias only use organic. So, you know, that's true. You know, even Jeffrey M. Smith has said it. I mean, we all know that if you're informed. You know, it's not no conspiracy theory. I mean, they're not eating this genetically modified garbage. And you know, what's funny is the ad that came in the mail, the No on 37, I looked for the catch terms GMO or genetic engineering, GE, or genetically modified organisms. That was not listed once. So they're not even trying to get that word out there. They don't even want people to know about GMO. They just want it to be about a label or cost going up for a company, which is ridiculous. You can print things for pennies now, and companies change their labels 5 times a year.
Exactly. It doesn't cost. It's a total lie that it's going to cost money, because they have to do this already. This is something they have to do. Going back real quick. Hold on, Raj. Real quick. We just threw up a quote there from an article on MSN Today about Mitt Romney and how he is obsessed about having organic, including for his favorite peanut butter and honey sandwiches. This was from an article that was on Mercola.com. Why do supporters of genetically engineered foods insist on organics for their own families? And that's basically it. They want us to eat this crud. They don't want to eat it. And if you go to the next quote, it's got one from Mother Jones. The Clinton and Bush families dined regularly on organic foods. Both Wagyu and grass-fed beef were frequently used. There's that one. And then there's one from Michelle Obama on The New Yorker. It says, you know, in my household over the last year, we have just shifted to organic for this very reason. I just saw a moment in my 9-year-old's life. We have a good pediatrician who is very focused on childhood obesity, and there was a period where he was like, she's tipping the scale. So she's kind of hiding it in this obesity type thing, but they do it. They know why they're doing it, and they do it, and they don't want us to have the same abilities. And because people don't have a lot of time to read the labels, but you know, if it says organic, it's not GMO. But why not just list what products in there are GMO? What are they trying to hide if it's so good for us?
I think the only good argument is that libertarian argument where we don't want to use government, which has created all these problems, to solve our solutions, and force companies to label when we have the non-GMO project. Companies like Nature's Path, which is one of our sponsors, already labeling their products non-GMO verified in the free market and setting the free market standard, and not waiting for government regulations and boondoggles to come save the day. I look at this like anything else. You know, it's like the Ron Paul thing. You know, I learned it the hard way. We got to look at the educational aspect. A lot of people don't even know about GMOs.
Yep.
A year ago, when we started just getting signatures, I started at Whole Foods in Tustin, in California, and in Orange County. And I tell you, I've never seen. I guess your guys' expose and the Organic Spies expose just hits home for me too, because I went to Whole Foods and people didn't even know what GMOs are. So how can they even know that Whole Foods is selling them openly? Like most of their products, the natural-based products at least, are based in GMO content. So
totally agree with you, Raj. That is huge, and that's the kind of effect we do have here. We're able to put those reports together. We're able to bring in the reporters to send them out, and it's all with your help and support. And if you can't give any money today to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com or by calling 888-253-3139, then just tell 10 of your friends today about InfoWars. Let's spread the word. So when we have an issue that we think is really important and that you think is really important, you've already got that network built to get it out there, to inform people, to really make it happen. Raj, thanks for calling. I really appreciate it, and keep fighting the good fight. Let me tell you this. You can send me an email at robd, R-O-B-D, at Infowars.com, and put "Hey Rob" in the subject line. That's a good tip for anybody out there who wants to send me any type of tips. I do a search once or twice a week for "Hey Rob," because I do get between 150 and 200 emails a day, and there's a lot of stuff I miss that it's too much. When I get up from my desk to go put on the show and get that rolling at nights, or if I'm shooting a video or anything, I might have 50 emails come in. I don't even have time to look at them all. I just start from wherever it is. So put "Hey Rob" in the subject line, ROBD, at Infowars.com. You can feel free to send me your information. If it's a YouTube video, if you want to include in there, Infowars has my permission to use this video, especially if it's your own YouTube video. Don't send it to someone else's unless it's your own, because we do like to play your videos that you've already put up. It was a lot of fun putting up those reporter contest videos. There were so many amazing videos and from so many different directions of people just taking action. So it's really great to put that stuff up. All we want to have is your permission. So if the YouTube bots come after us, we can say, look, we have an email. It says we can use it. And that's the kind of stuff we really do appreciate out there. And that's one way that you can help get into the fight, where it doesn't necessarily cost you any money. It just costs you your time, but you're helping the cause and you're getting the word out. And with that, let's go to the next caller, Helen, calling us from Canada. How you doing today?
I'm a real activist, and I do inform every day. I have a little sheet, and I say go to www.infowars.com and become educated yourself, rather than allowing the external people to dictate what they want on you, or to tell you what they want you to know. One thing I do want to say is that we are really affecting our young people. I go and observe at our school board meeting, and we did get fluoridated water fluoride out of our water in Calgary. And I did do a presentation there. But one thing I do now go to is our Calgary Board of Education meeting with the trustees. Our children are being dumbed down so much that they're not even allowed to speak. They're totally. The other day they had to wait an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half to sing our national anthem. So they had to learn to be obedient and totally quiet for an hour and a half, almost an hour and a half. Then when they did a presentation, they didn't even encourage, none of them spoke. It was all through art. And so what they're doing is they're stopping the energy flow of the body, so they don't have a voice, and so that we can be very pleasant and nice Canadians, but have no voice or expression. And this causes a blockage, which causes health problems.
I totally agree with you. And another thing it does is it teaches people to be obedient office workers. That is what the public school system is set up to do, to train people to be yes men and women out there, to not question the system, to not look at the other side of the story. Sorry for interrupting, Helen. Keep going.
Anyway, it's absolutely awful what's being done, because I was a teacher and I was run out of the school system because I was too free, loving and caring, and it's just authoritarian censorship and tyranny that I see, and we must remove our children from these prison camps.
I totally agree.
To that, the other day I got a free coupon free coupon from our 7-Eleven store. So I went there and got a hot chocolate. Well, I dropped some of it on my shirt, couldn't get it out of the water, out of cold water, the stain. I had to put it in Javex, and I thought to myself, when you were saying there's MSG and other stuff in it, what do we put in some of the food that we get at these stores? So I encourage people to always make their own food at home, and don't go to, and seldom go to some of the stores that, and certainly don't use a free coupon just to get trapped in MSG or different foodstuffs like that. And
I totally agree. Totally agree, Helen. And what you probably were drinking there was high fructose corn syrup, which is a sugar substitute that we take 20% of our corn crop and basically turn it into, you know, well, a little mercury gets in, but, you know, who's that going to hurt? Thanks for calling, Helen, up in Canada. If you have time, wow, we just jumped up to 137,000. So people are definitely waking up. The spirit of freedom is rising. 137,000 right now, on our way to a goal of 1 million. Please go to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. Send this out on your Twitters, your Facebooks, your email list. Get on MySpace. Let people know that this is going on. Let them know they can tune in. We're going to have David Icke coming up in in 15 minutes. He's going to be coming up. I'm going to be out of here. We got a whole host of guests and speakers. You can go see the special guests over at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. You can also donate there. You can call 888-253-3139. And I'm going to take 2 more calls. I'm going to go to Casey and Rob, and I think that's going to be it because I want to do one last thing. Sorry to the other guys. And I see Leo and Mass there, who I met, I think, on my second out-of-town mission. I'm not going to be able to get to you guys. I'm going to go to Casey and Rob, and that's it. But thank you guys for calling in. I really do appreciate it. Casey, calling from Oregon. Go ahead.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
It's going great. How you doing?
Good, good. Hey, listen, I just wanted to get back onto the fluoride with that gal.
Oh, you don't like them putting poison in our water supply? You think that's bad?
No, man. Up here, what they're telling us is to help clean our teeth.
Oh, yeah, of course. And here it is coming from 1968. These were pamphlets that were put out in and then Alex Jones just came in. I guess he's raring to go. He's going to be up in less than an hour.
Take your time. We got David Icke coming up.
Yeah, we got David Icke, and then Alex will be in with him.
Looking forward to that,
Exactly.
But I just want to really get out to, he's a clown. I'm watching you guys on the stream right now.
Yeah, I know. It's a little delayed. It's kind of funny, though. But go ahead.
It is funny.
What are you doing to get fluoride out of your community?
Well, we have this petition going now. Now, the whole entire initiation here in Portland is very sketch from the beginning. Our mayor here, Sam Adams, tried to pass it without a vote, just try to implement it without saying anything.
That's like bizarro Sam Adams. That's not the real Sam Adams. I mean, that's got to get in with Sam Adams, and he wants to put poison in you. Go ahead, Rob. Sorry I interrupted you. Yeah, you guys basically in Portland are having that problem. But go ahead. What are you guys doing to keep? I guess they're going to start in a couple months, right?
I just want to inform people that there is a petition out right now to bring this to a vote. It's really important because this is what's going on. They're trying to implement this without putting it to the vote. Now, Portland, Oregon, this comes to a vote every 5 years, and it's always just blown out of water. Everyone says no fluoride in the water. But now they're just really forcing this on us. We have a petition out, but this petition is scandalous and also because it's for Multnomah County, only about 3 little sections of Multnomah County. Multnomah County is huge. It includes like cities like Portland, Gresham, Oregon City, and things like that.
Right.
So there's only one specific part, which is only a very small portion of Multnomah County, can vote on this, can actually put their vote. Gresham can't vote on it. Oregon City can't vote on it. Clackamas can't vote on it, even though it's going to be in their water systems, the same with Beaverton and Hillsborough.
Oh, but they say it's safe and effective for you. You mean you've got a patriot like Sam Adams telling you it's good for you, right? Rob, where do they go to this, real quick, where do they go to sign this petition?
You know, his wife, you know, said that, you know, they just had a kid themselves, and I try to explain this to them, like, listen, the fluoride is one of the most deadly chemicals out there. It's rat poison, you know. You're going to give rat poison to a kid, and, you know. And she said, well, you know, if it's going to help my kid's teeth, and, you know, or it's to help the homeless teeth. And my biggest rebuttal to that is, you know, since when does the government care about the homeless? now they suddenly
exactly
care for the homeless's teeth. But they'll care for their teeth, but won't like help them try to get a job or get them out of poverty. Or how about the 30% of the people unemployed are the veterans? You know, so I just want to get it out there more. If there are people outside of Portland that, like in different states, that can know people here in Portland, give them a call, say, hey man, get this going, stop this. It's gross. You know, we're a lot of people are very liberal here, which is nothing wrong with that. But when you blindly follow things just because someone's telling you to, it becomes very dangerous. I just want people to wake up to this. And
I totally agree. And you know what? If you do have fluoride in your water supply like we do in Austin, I have, if you guys can bring it up, the ProPure system. I recently put that into my house. I switched out my older system for that, and I put the fluoride filters in there along with the little dome-shaped filters that are impregnated with silver. And let me tell you, the water's never tasted better. And you really can't put a price on your health. So if you're out there, we actually have a really good deal. I think if you put the coupon code WATER in, you get an extra 10% off of your ProPure water system. And, you know, Rob, that's what, or Casey, that's what you guys are going to have to do is once they start putting this in, you're going to have to figure out a way to get it out. And there's a lot of different ways. One of them is a ProPure system, and I encourage you to get one if you don't have one, if you live in a community where there is water fluoridation. I got to run now, Casey. Thanks for calling. Rob in Texas, you're going to be our last caller of this segment, and we're going to bring up David Icke in about 10 minutes. So how's it going today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yep. So is this Rob? Is this a female Rob?
Yeah.
All right. Well, go ahead. What's your question or comment?
Well, I have a comment. I had a drone fly over me last night as I came home to my house. I have a long driveway, and I saw something odd in the sky where it didn't belong there. And so as I parked my car and got out, well, here it came. Couldn't really hear it coming. But as it was overhead about 1,000 feet, you could hear the motor, you know, kind of
Sounds like a lawnmower.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And then it just cruised on. It's south on Highway 77 coming out of Waco.
Okay.
So I probably would have ignored it except for Alex and InfoWars. The other thing is I work near Fort Hood, and they were shipping equipment out last night, not bringing it in. Putting it on trucks, personnel carriers, and these Jeep-like things that have the mortars or rocket launchers on them. They hold 4 in a cartridge on each side of it. And so I thought that was a little curious. Usually they bring it in to be shipped out, but yesterday they were putting them on the trucks and shipping them somewhere.
We went to Fort Hood about a year and a half ago. Rob, and we actually did a little report. They were doing some construction, and it's right next to the train tracks there inside the fort, and they're building this area and closing it, but all the barbed wire is pointing in. It's not pointing out to keep people out. It's to keep people in. And we haven't gone back there yet. That would be interesting to see what their progress is on that. They're supposedly building a hospital area, but who knows what they are really building. I mean, why do you need to keep people in a hospital unless there's some sort of pandemic that they're not telling us about? Rob, how important is Infowars.com to you? And if you want to give a shout out to why people should contribute to this year's Money Bomb, please do so. Are you there, Rob?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what do you think about this year's Money Bomb? How, are you letting people know about this? Are you sending it out to your friends and family, getting them?
Oh, yeah, I'll be doing the whole banner thing and talking it up. We're doing a church retreat tonight and all of this. Yes, I'm all on board with all of that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And Rob, I appreciate your call. Thanks for calling in. And yeah, it is because of Alex Jones that a lot of people know about these issues like drones. My sister was walking down the street, and Alex told this story, but she told it to me the other day. She was walking with her daughter, and she looks up and she sees this drone. She's like, "Oh my God!" And she's kind of, I throw a lot of this stuff out, and they don't believe half of it. But I just tell them, "Hey, look, here's the documents," and And then she keeps walking, and she sees these two men in a culvert. One of them's got these virtual reality glasses on going, I can see the field. I can see the people. I can see the river. And another guy's controlling it. And that's the kind of stuff that's going on. That's the technology. And she asked him, she goes, hey, are you guys flying that drone? And they ignored her, because that's what the government does. They ignore you because they really don't want to answer your questions. They want you to shut up, pay your taxes, and go away. That's why they train you that way in the public schools. We had a lot of great callers. I wish we'd go to more of them. I want to do this quick review. If you could get the Utopia clips ready. A couple months ago, a couple weeks ago, and this is in the first InfoWars magazine, I saw an ad for Utopia Fest, and we actually got a couple of press passes for this event. And you can run the graphic when you find it's the Utopia B-roll, I think is what it's called. And really cool festival out in the middle of nowhere, Texas. And, you know, there's the first issue. That's what the ad looked like. And it says, celebrate freedom. And so I went there thinking, you know, wow, they're going to give me a wristband. I'm going to have to wait a long line to get beer or get food or whatever. And let me tell you, it was anything but that. It was family friendly. There was a lot of young kids there. I brought my two kids. Just a beautiful area out in the hill country between these four like little hills. They had two stages set up. And it was a lot of good music. You could bring your own drinks. You didn't have to buy their corporate sponsored drinks. You could bring whatever you wanted. You could camp pretty much wherever you wanted. And I mean, it was just a lot of fun. They had one stage that looked, you know, like a traditional stage. And then they had another one that was a little more modern with a lot of trussing. And it was just a lot of fun to go there and just be with, you know, kind of freedom-oriented people who you know, were just out there to have a good time. There wasn't an agenda going on there. It was just a great place to go and relax. So I really had a good time. There was a shot of my camper. There's my little one chasing a ball. He had a great time, and he's a big fan of live music. So he was there clicking along to the band. He makes these little clicking noises and as the music's going. And there they are riding around in the wagon. That's my older son pulling my younger one. And I mean, it was a blast. So I would encourage you to go out to Utopia Fest next year and celebrate freedom, because it is a place where they're not pushing, you know, you got to drink this beer, this and that. And here coming up, this is Victor Wooten, one of my favorite all-time musician, bass players. I mean, just an amazing artist, individual. He ended with this great song that my kids wanted to download. It's called Heaven. And just, I mean, I can't say enough about this guy. He's super talented. I don't know what more I could say about the Utopia Fest, but it was a great time. I'm glad they gave us some press passes to go out there. I had a really good time, even though it rained really hard the first night. And it was a mud pit. I got the RV that we rented because it was raining so hard, got it stuck out there. But, you know, the owner of the land came out and helped me out, pulled me out. So I can't say enough about it. And that's going to be about all the time I have. I want to get out a little early so David Icke has plenty of time. We're up to 138,000 right now. So, you know, today's payday. If, you know, why don't you put away aside that case of beer that you're going to buy this weekend?
I don't want anybody giving us money that you know, that isn't well-to-do or upper middle class.
Exactly.
I'm sick of the fact that it's mainly poor people that are given to us because they care. It's time for people that know the New World Order's bad news to pony up for the InfoWar.
Exactly. The people out there that are small business owners that do have that extra capital, we're putting it to good use. Every bit of money that we're making here, we're going to put directly back into the operation. And I've seen it happen. All 3 years I've been here, I'm coming up on my 4th year being here, and every time we get the money, we do exactly what we're going to say. We're going to expand, we do that. We're going to build a studio, we do that. We're going to hire more reporters, we do that. Now we're expanding in another area, and we want to buy satellite uplinks. All this stuff costs a lot of money. So go to InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com, or you can donate by phone, 888-253-3139. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. It has been a lot of fun. I hope you woke up with me. I played some great music. I feel great right now. And so I'm going to go back out and do whatever I can to defeat the New World Order. And we'll be right back with David Icke.